But that's by the by. Will that cast a cloud over the proceedings over the next few days in Ankara? That's a big question mark yet to be answered. We're seeing some officials, individuals disembark from the rear of Air Force One by the looks of it. Now, the rear of Air Force One is where the journalists travel. It's where the cheap seats are, quite frankly. And up at the front of Air Force One, that's where all of the more luxurious rooms of state, the bedroom, the boardroom, all of these famous rooms that we have seen in the past, where past presidents have directed the response to 9/11, or indeed where one president was sworn in following the assassination of JFK. That, of course, LBJ, sworn in on Air Force One.
Yes, and of course we are going into this NATO summit with the US President actually warning allies that unless they increase spending on defence, they are going to face consequences. Quite what the consequences were hasn't been revealed yet, but when you are in the situation that we appear to be in, where Keir Starmer announces that £15 billion uplift in defence spending, but the will only raise the UK figure to 2.7% of GDP by 2029, and that 15 billion, well, there's 5 billion at the very least short in it. I mean, it's not really a defence plan, it's more of a defence ambition, I think you could call it.
And I think this will be one of the big talking points over the next couple of days. Frankly, how much room is there for disagreement? How much further can these European leaders go? Many of the European leaders, it must be said, have substantially increased defence spending. Germany being the standout example, from being one of the lowest spending rich countries in Europe to suddenly, within the space of 2 years, jumping to being one of the highest spending large countries in Europe. That shows what can change in the space of 2 years, and frankly that does put to shame some of the decisions that this government here in Britain has made, given that Germany started from a lower base and has jumped up to a higher total, all because they've changed their debt rule around defence.
The thing is with this NATO summit, Tom, we are talking about figures and numbers and who's spending what, etc., etc. And as we all know by now, we have talked about it till we're blue in the face. Our defence plan isn't really a plan whatsoever. It has seen the people that really care about it in government actually resign over the matter, and they are still not happy. But this comes in the week that a Russian aircraft conducted a danger close low pass of the HMS Prince of Wales. The one aircraft carrier was seen to have operating in the Norwegian Sea. Now, this is an incredibly, I mean, you know, we see this incredibly more often now. It's increasing, the fact that the Russians are really pushing their luck, certainly up in the Arctic area. So this is, we can talk about numbers and figures until we're blue in the face and who's spending what. The thing is, Russia are listening to this and watching. I'll tell you what, one of the biggest observers of this NATO summit will be Putin, who's going to be listening very closely. And why the hell, Tom, we are sending a lame duck Prime Minister who's going to be out in, what, 2 weeks' time? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
It does. It's worth reminding that just yesterday on this programme, we reported of Russian planes that had flown incredibly close to one of our aircraft carriers, dropped sonar buoys in a manoeuvre that can only be seen as provocative. And this is the latest in a long string of provocative actions that Russia has taken against this country. The firing of so-called warning shots against 2 pensioners out on a sail. The mysterious cyber attacks that have afflicted car manufacturers, supermarkets, you name it. We keep seeing these sorts of small provocations that can actually have big effects here in this country, with many security experts linking them all back to one man, Vladimir Putin.
Exactly. And the Russian shadow fleet that we made a big deal about, taking one ship out where we know there are hundreds coming through our waters every single day. Shall we bring Mark White into this conversation now? He was here in the studio with us. Mark, what is actually going to be achieved by this NATO summit?
Well, it'll certainly be a gathering of individuals who will be patting themselves on the back about how much they are doing and how well they are progressing towards having a much stronger, bolder NATO that is better funded than it ever was in terms of course, individual armed forces being bolstered by more defence spending. But there are awkward questions nonetheless that need to be addressed over just who is spending what and how much better are certain countries doing than others. Now, it is true to say that if you look at GDP levels, gross domestic product, you know, how well our economy is doing, and that measurement of GDP percentage on defence, we are way, way down the table now. We're near the bottom on that 2.69% of GDP that we'll get to in a year or two's time. But if you park that for a second and actually look at, you know, monetary terms, we are about the third highest contributor to defence within NATO after the United States and then I think Germany. But there are certainly issues and questions to be asked here. While historically, you know, we have a higher defence budget, we're not getting bang for our buck in many respects. Procurement decisions that have been made that have been really bad procurement decisions. And there are a myriad of kind of reasons behind that. Chief among them, actually, is interference from those senior figures within the Ministry of Defence who want this bit of kit and that bit of kit added to the latest procurement. And they say that, you know, that is adding certainly to the situation as far as you know, increasing the price on some of these big ticket items, and add to that as well what the politicians are doing, which is sometimes delaying the progress of these items that are being sort of introduced and bought, likes of ships and things. We will get politicians often staggering the sort of the process of building them. All that adds to the cost and means, to get back to that original point, that we often don't get bang for our buck in the way that perhaps France, that spends less in terms of the amount of money on defence that the UK does, but seems to have more in the way of assets and military personnel than the UK does as well. So there's issues around that. You know, that fine detail is probably not going to be something that Donald Trump is going to delve into. It's going to be much more about lobbing in the stun grenades there and getting a reaction from those members, as he's done in the past. And you could argue that perhaps that is what has brought around the big shift in the way that these European NATO countries are investing more in their defences. Probably the truth of it is actually it was Russia's main invasion of Ukraine that prompted them to suddenly sober up and realise that they've got to be investing much, much more in their defence.
We're not going to hear Trump mince his words when it comes to Keir Starmer, though, is he? I mean, it is going to be fairly humiliating for our current Prime Minister. It
might be and it might not be. You know, there's a thing about Trump from afar. You know, he will lob these incendiary comments in, as he's done, saying to Keir Starmer or talking about Keir Starmer multiple times as not being Churchillian in terms of, you know, his presence on the international stage, his ability to run his own country, and, of course, has also criticised the UK government and the Italians, for that matter, and some other European allies for not doing more to help America in prosecuting its war in Iran. For instance, the UK and Italy denied the Americans the use of their own military bases, you know, in the UK and in Italy's terms, you know, in Sicily. So that's led to lots of recriminations and bad feeling between the United States and quite a few of these key NATO European countries as well. So it will be interesting to see how Donald Trump deals with that and addresses that, because, as I say, although he will be quite critical from afar, normally in a sort of one-to-one basis, he is, you know, normally quite reserved and polite in the way that he will speak to individuals. maybe Zelensky being
Yes,
one of the exceptions to that particular argument a while back.
Will the football last night have put him in a bad mood? I'm apologise. We'll get back to you in just a second, Mark White, because we have some breaking news to bring you here live on GB News.
Yes, Nigel Farage has announced he will make a statement on his future in public life at 2 p.m. today.
This is a tweet he has published in the last couple of minutes saying simply, "I will make a statement on my future in public life at 2 p.m. With us in the studio is our political editor, Christopher Hope. Christopher, this seems like it will be a big announcement.
I think this will be. I think he is under maximum pressure. We saw a clip last night with a Sky News reporter, got him when he was in an airport in America, it seemed, and he is under pressure, no question. He talked about Leveson. He lashed out at the reporter, saying that his family life were sacrosanct. He claimed Sky had been trying to torture his family. Sky denied that. He's under pressure. It's really his fault because he's taken money from people and hasn't told Parliament. He took £5 million from Christopher Harwood, who's a crypto billionaire, £5 million gift. Didn't tell MPs about that. He should have done. He
argues that that's because he argues it's a personal gift and there is an exemption within the rules that before you become an MP, money given to you within 1 year before you become an MP, you don't have to declare it if it's personal, but you do have to declare it if it's used professionally. And
that obviously is a debate. And who many people say or don't believe that a £5 million gift doesn't have some form of strings attached, given he was about to return to public life. Now, of course, in that period before the July 24 election, he said initially, I won't stand again, and then did stand again after meeting people in pubs and urging him to stand, then won that seat in Clacton. The rules are you must declare anything more than £300 in the 12 months until that point. There's more support from an individual called George Cottrell, who's a key ally of Nigel Farage. That hasn't been declared. Kemi Badenoch, we should be getting a clip very shortly of what Kemi Badenoch has said this morning. She was asked, should he come clean about any money, any support given to him in that 12-month period, as Tom says. Kemi Badenoch says simply, yes, that should happen, because as she says, if you don't answer the questions, they'll just keep coming. You can't run away from these questions. I'm looking at today's Telegraph. Now, the Telegraph is a paper which has been loyal to Nigel Farage. He writes columns in the paper. The leader column says Farage must be open about his finances. For me, Farage has lost the Telegraph on this matter, and that is a bad moment for him. Normally, the Telegraph walks in lockstep with what Nigel Farage says. It ends by saying this: if Mr Farage aspires to be the post of Prime Minister, then he must remember the adage of former US President Harry Truman concerning kitchens and an aversion to heat. If he can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. He's under pressure. We'll hear more from him at 2 o'clock. Stay tuned to GB News. This will be big.
It's going to be a big announcement. But it is fair to say, Christopher, that he wouldn't be the first political leader that has accepted gifts from very, very rich friends and donors and influencers. So is there a bit of a witch hunt going on here as well? Because it is Nigel Farage.
Certainly that's what his supporters say, and that's what he says himself, and they see it as an attempt by the establishment to shut him down. But the rules are very clear. Yes, he may not have thought he was going to be an MP, let's say, in April or May 2024, and then he did stand, and that means everything received in the previous 12 months must be declared more than £300. And again, it's a matter of judgment whether it's a personal gift or is it about your future? Now, the £5 million from Christopher Harwood, was that thank you for your work on Brexit? Was it a gift to help with security and keep his family safe? Or was it because Nigel Farage is supportive of cryptocurrencies? And that is why we're in politics, because if these people, whoever they are, Nigel Farage or anyone, want to run the country and receive our taxpayers' support and represent the country on the national stage, they've got to be completely clear about where money comes from. In this situation, he hasn't been keen to talk enough about this, and, well, we'll hear more from him at 2 o'clock. He is, I don't know if we can show the clip with Sky News, he is under pressure at the moment.
Yeah, we'll try and find that clip and get it out. But ultimately, a lot of people will be reading these words, I'll make a statement on my future in public life at 2 o'clock, and think, is Nigel Farage about to resign? Now, can I pour some cold water on that? I would be shocked if that were the case.
Well, I would be, frankly, Tom, but I wonder whether it's a moment for pause and reflection on his role at Reform. I think without Reform, without Nigel Farage, Reform's party support halves. It's down to 12 points, where it was with Richard Tice when he ran the party at the beginning of 2004. So he knows there's a huge Farage dividend of having him in charge of that party, and he won't want to give that away. I was talking to a senior figure in Reform late last week. They said it's like a start-up. Essentially, it's a party that didn't exist, barely existed, 2 years ago, just past the election. It won a handful of MPs, that was it. And since then the membership went through the roof, millions have come. It's going through its next stage of growth as a start-up, and that is often when you have the person who started it letting go of power, letting go of influence over the company. You can't run it with the intensity that he has, as this party purports to be the next party of government.
Well, the former chairman, David Bull, said recently on social media that he thinks Nigel Farage needs a break, needs a holiday, had been working too hard, wearing himself down. I mean, could he announce a leave of absence, perhaps?
Well, that's what I think may happen. Now, I just don't know this, and he hasn't spoken to me about it. I've no inside knowledge on that. I just wonder whether he might just take a break and then come back. I think if he leaves the party, Reform is over in the sense it is a challenger party for government. He is absolutely vital to keeping that party frothing with ideas and just his kind of charisma. The other people in that party don't have the same. And that is the difference, I think, and that's why I think that's really a weakness, I think, of Reform UK. It hasn't got other leaders around Nigel Farage who can replace him. When you become Prime Minister, you're the first among equals, you're primus inter pares. With Reform, it is about one man. You may have Robert Jenrick there, Suella Braverman there and others, but really it is Nigel Farage's party, and in fact the party to which he owned as a company before it was recently restructured.
So if he was going to take, say, a leave of absence, take summer off, understandable, he has worked very hard, who would be the caretaker manager? And would it go back to Richard Tice?
Well, it would be Richard Tice. He's a deputy leader. And then we're looking at on screen now at Donald Trump arriving at the NATO summit, obviously juxtaposed with his friend Nigel Farage in some political stress back home. Almost certainly Richard Tice. I don't know how they run a leadership campaign if him to go, because almost certainly Robert Jenrick is the one, I think, who would see himself as a natural successor to Nigel Farage.
It is worth noting Donald Trump there greeting, I think that's President Erdogan at the bottom of the steps, greeting him. The picture's quite small, but I think that is Donald Trump walking down the steps alone and being greeted there in Ankara ahead of this summit. Mark White, our Home Security editor, still with us in the studio. What can we expect over this next couple of days?
Well, potentially fireworks. We just don't know. It's absolutely true that Donald Trump is smarting from what he perceives as a lack of support from key NATO European allies over the US intervention in Iran, specifically, of course, the denying of the use of US bases in countries like the UK and Italy. So he may well feel that he wants to be quite a disruptive influence, as he has been in the past at NATO conferences. Interesting, just going back to the issue of Nigel Farage here, we've seen that post from Donald Trump just in the last day there, effectively lending support to Nigel Farage and suggesting that here is Nigel Farage being stitched up by the establishment in the same way that he was in the United States by the US establishment. So clearly a sympathetic supporter in Donald Trump there. Quite interestingly as well, Nigel Farage, I was with him on a small boat, not a migrant boat, but a fishing boat a year or so back. We were looking for small boats in the English Channel, just talking about the issue, which is, he's very publicly said that he thinks the establishment is going to go after him. And he said that in terms to me at that time. This was after their first local election success when they did so well. that first set of local elections. And they were really riding high in the opinion polls. But he said to me, and he knew that, he said, the establishment will come after me, not just in terms of the political establishment, but also, he says, the media establishment and other, arms of, government, the authorities will look for whatever they can. And he is probably, we know because he's been suggesting that this is an establishment campaign to try to undermine him over his funding, whatever we think about whether he should have declared this or not. So it will be very interesting to see. It was clear, it would be great if we could get that Sky News clip at some point. We might not get it, but he was so visibly angry at the Sky News reporter that he didn't just once say to the Sky News reporter that this was just not on, that his family was being harassed and, just they'd overstepped the boundary.
Which Sky do deny.
Yeah, and then he returned to the reporter to have another go at him. So clearly very, very angry.
And the point is, this pressure is on all our leaders. We have to pressure them on where they receive money from. They have to be open about what they get the money from. So that's why MPs declare any gifts over £300 in the 12 months before they become an MP, so we know who they're on the hook for. I mean, that's the point of the scrutiny, and it's not different to any leader.
It's absolutely true. But if you think, perhaps those who are supportive of Nigel Farage might look at what's happening in the media landscape at the moment on our news channels and contrast the clamour that there has been to cover the funding of Nigel Farage with these gifts. Compare and contrast that to the scrutiny, perhaps, that there has been of Andy Burnham not answering questions, not taking, a press conference after an event and assuming power without any kind of way in which people can hold him to account. There's not been as much of that, perhaps, Nigel Farage's supporters might say, within the news media that are now so keen to highlight issues around his finance.
Christopher, how damaging do you think Nigel Farage getting quite emotional with that Sky reporter could be to him? I mean, obviously, we know Reform supporters are always going to support reform. But there are a group of floating voters out there who are very, very disillusioned with all politicians at the moment. How damaging could his losing his temper, which is basically what he did, be?
Well, it's only social media. It was clipped up on social media. I think his supporters are absolutely... They think he's the Messiah to them.
Course,
I think it won't damage them amongst those. I think for other people, though, this party's got to move from being an angry party, one that can be seen to be divisive, that doesn't condemn someone with some issues in a country they should maybe be speaking out on, and govern for the whole country. That's where the problem is, and that's why many people think the party is platformed, or plateaued, I should say, at around 25, 26, 27%. How can it punch through? It's got two challenges, really. It is grown so quickly. The money coming in now is such a scale. The support is also such a scale, I think, that it needs to go to the next stage. Like with a startup company, it goes through a few iterations, and that is also true of a leader. He can't do everything. He is trying to do everything. And I think the pressure is building and building, and something has got to give. But equally, they can't lose him as their figurehead, though, Tom.
Well, exactly. Can this just be a perfunctory reorganisation within how Reform is run as a party? That's not a statement on his public life. Future in public life sounds like, are we going to see him on our television anymore?
Well, this wasn't a future he had planned for himself in the first part of 2024, when he was thinking of, well, we're looking at maybe a Trump second term, I can support him, I can, Reform, he was then president of Reform, he owned the majority shares in a company which was Reform. I think from memory it was 14 shares and he had the majority of them. So it wasn't really set up in any sense to be what it is now, and the party has got to change the way it's run. It's currently trying to vet all these candidates for the expected early general election later this year or in May. Also in May next year, I think there's 5,000 council seats up for grabs, twice or three times the number we had in May. They've got to be vetted. There's so much on him as an individual. He's travelling around the country, keeping support going, trying to get, of course, to the massive by-election, the biggest ever in Greater Manchester, for a new mayor there coming up at the end of this month. There's so much going on. You know, is it too much for one man? That is a question I think we can reasonably ask of Nigel Farage, looking at the footage we're seeing, looking how pressured he is. He's getting money to support him. He has got a lot of issues with security. I know a lot about that. We don't report it because we don't want to make it any worse for him already, but he has got a lot of issues with security. And he's sort of gone towards talking about that. And that's where the money for Christopher Harwood came in, the $5 million. But then there's also a thank you for Brexit. And also, so until he... I think he's got to be completely open about his finances, frankly, for that 12 months until the election.
The interesting thing, Christopher, is that Nigel Farage, throughout his political career, has always been very critical of the other parties about hypocrisy, about not being honest, about clear, you know, sort of like clear blue water about what we're doing, no hiding place. I mean, obviously, when Keir Starmer and Lord Ali's situation broke, I mean, Nigel Farage was very, very outspoken on that. Understandably so, lots of people were very angry. But he's doing the self-same thing. Surely he must have realised that by not being transparent about the money and the relationship with these people, he was going down the same path.
There was a time when I thought that Nigel Farage maybe wanted the fight, so maybe he wanted to try and force Parliament to kick him out, and he wins a by-election to come back in Clacton, which he probably would do. He wants to be seen as the outsider, always beating his fist on the door of the establishment and can't get in. That kind of worked as a stick, maybe to drive support for him. But I think it looks to me like the pressure is getting too great. I don't think he'll quit. I think there'll be a pause here while he reboots. We've got a clip we can play you now of Kemi Badenoch's reaction earlier.
I had to make declarations day in, day out of people who are giving donations and gifts or whatever, so that people can see where the money is coming from. Why does Nigel Farage want an exception? Why does he think that he is better or more important than the rest of us and he doesn't have to follow the rules? We all need to follow the rules. So yes, if he did receive benefits and gifts in kind, then he should declare them. Why does he not want to do that? He keeps saying that he's a man of the people. No man of the people, as far as I know, gets £5 million cash as a gift for no reason whatsoever. And the reason why these stories and these scandals keep pursuing him is because he won't do what everybody else does, is come out and answer the questions properly. Telling people that it's none of their business means that the stories will continue, there will continue to be questions asked. He should just come out and be straight with people. That's what I do all the time.
OK, that's Kemi Badenoch there saying that, you know, frankly, answer the questions, Nigel Farage, and get that. I go back again to this article in the lead column in today's Telegraph, saying then his story has changed from being a reward for his anti-EU campaigning to money needed for personal protection. He's got to come clean. That's what always happens. He can accuse people of an establishment hit job, they say. But frankly, when he's attacked Sir Keir Starmer over the gifts from Lord Ali, his spectacles, suit and likewise, then he can't expect to, frankly, not receive the same treatment back.
I mean, you say that, Chopper. I'm just reminded of the 2024 Reform Party conference where Nigel Farage gave his big keynote speech, stepping out onto that stage, brandishing a pair of glasses in front of the whole audience, holding it ostentatiously across the audience, putting them on the head and saying, wow, just give me a second, do you like them? Do you like them? Very expensive, but guess what? I bought them myself. How about that? And he did make this big, ostentatious play of buying his own glasses, buying his own suits, as a difference to Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner and everyone else in the Labour cabinet who had these things bought for them. Yeah. And that does rather sort of stick in the neck now that we know, well, OK, maybe he bought them himself, but he was given money by a lot of very, very wealthy people to do so.
That's right. I mean, and the issue of the gift from Christopher Harwood wasn't, I don't remember it being declared by Nigel Farage, is someone else revealed it. And that's part of the problem. We're just pulling information out of Nigel Farage when he should, frankly, declare it all. And the only way out of this situation he is in right now is fully declaring everything he received. And
I think there is an arguable point, obviously, from his point of view that it was in that period where there was a great deal of uncertainty about whether he was going to enter the fray again in terms of full-throated, politics, that he was going to stand in Clacton, and he wasn't for a while, and at the last minute he did. So, it could be argued in terms of that period that he, did receive this as a gift. He didn't need to declare it, but of course it's probably now that in the period since it's come to light again, the way in which he has defended himself, which has been, it seems very, very defensive and just, refusing to sort of answer any of the key questions and being quite irritated by the very fact that people should want to ask these questions, that I think has got lots of people now sort of coming into this particular argument and piling pressure on him.
And what's so interesting, I think, Mark, Tom and Dawn, is watching the way that other politicians in that party have responded differently. So Robert Jenrick at the weekend was essentially saying, this is money from a friend, almost supporting the reporting about George Cottrell in the Sunday Times, I thought, because politicians who have come from other parties into reform would be thinking, well, why isn't he declaring this? Because I would have to. Why are you trying to treat the rules not applying to you? That's all very well when you're in an insurgent party, but when you're a party which purports to be the next government, you've got to follow some of the rules that are out there.
Nick Robinson of the BBC has just entered an interesting suggestion into the mix, which is, do you not rule out the possibility that Nigel Farage resigns as an MP today to trigger a by-election in which he runs as a candidate that the establishment is trying to stop? Chopper, do you think that that's a possibility?
Well, Nick Robinson is articulating what I've thought has been going on for a bit. I thought him not following the rules, almost goading an inquiry from Parliament to find him guilty and then kick him out, was just to keep the next 3 years bubbling of the establishment kicking him out. He fights to get back in. He wins again in Clacton. And that is a way of... That's kind of the Farage stick of being this outsider, being kicked out by the establishment, fighting to get back in. So I wonder whether he could be doing that, because, of course, if he did resign as MP, that would wipe clean anything from the past. It would mean... It
would preempt the potential sanctions that might be
It would reset
the
12-month period. Yeah. So it would reset the period, the 12 months going into the moment he becomes an MP. It's only the 12 months preceding that, which would mean that any money received going back before the general election wouldn't need to be talked about in the same way.
I mean,
the last
MP who resigned as an MP in order to then fight that same seat in the by-election that he created was one Zach Goldsmith in Richmond Park.
2014, over Heathrow expansion.
Over Heathrow expansion. And he lost that handsomely to the Liberal Democrats. Quite often, constituents don't like being made to vote for something when they see it as pointless.
However, that was a member of a governing party. Now, members of governing parties don't normally win by-elections. The last one to do that, who wasn't Andy Burnham, frankly, who won in Gorton and won in Makerfield, forgive me, was Robert Jenrick in 2013 when he won against reform.
In Uxbridge 2023.
OK, gentlemen, we're going to have to break into this conversation, but if you are just joining us, we are discussing the breaking news that Nigel Farage is going to make an important statement on his future at 2 o'clock this afternoon, his future in public life. That will be at 2 o'clock, so please do stay with us on that one. But we are moving on briefly for now. The Prisons Watchdog says it will closely monitor offenders who are released from jail early as a government scheme, amid concerns rapists could be amongst those freed.
Well, from September, some prisoners will be allowed to leave jail earlier in an effort to ease overcrowding. Yes,
reports suggest killers, rapists and sex offenders could be among the up to 6,000, or the numbers are not confirmed, inmates released over the coming months.
Well, GBNews reporter, national reporter Charlie Peters joins us now live from Westminster, I think it is. But Charlie, do tell us more.
Well, good afternoon to you both. Yes, we do know that several victims and survivors have received letters warning them that their abusers could be released later this year when the next provisions of the Sentencing Act passed in January come into effect this autumn. That means from September we could see sexual abusers, rapists freed in order to loosen prison spaces and give more capacity to a crumbling justice system. This morning we heard the Sentencing Minister Jake Richards saying that he feared the system was unravelling, and that's why he took that decision, and that's why the government is making difficult decisions, he says, to keep the prison system going. Well, earlier this morning we also spoke to Sarah Wilson, an abuse survivor from Rotherham, and also solicitor Amy Clowry from Switolski's, who they spoke about how so many victims and survivors were exhausted and frightened by this situation. They are urging MPs today to back an amendment being brought forward by the Conservatives that would prevent anyone convicted of child sexual abuse or sexual crimes, not just for grooming gang victims, but for all forms of child sexual abuse, prevent them from benefiting from this early release scheme. Several victims have travelled down to Westminster today to speak to MPs ahead of that vote, and I'm joined now by one of them, Jade Belgrove, who's travelled down from Birmingham. Jade, thank you so much for speaking to us today. This is a tricky moment for you, but you've made the decision to come and speak to MPs. What will you tell them?
I'll tell them that they need to seriously reverse this decision. These people are the worst in society, and it's not acceptable to have them back on our streets ready to offend again.
Now, Jade, in your case, a man called Simon Tyler, he was jailed in 2024. He will be released later this year as it currently stands. How did it feel when you received that letter?
It was, I can't really put it into words, to be honest. It was gut-wrenching. When I first read it, I thought that can't apply to me. Like, he's been in jail 18 months, but I've only just fought that battle. It can't be me. And I called my victim liaison officer, and they confirmed that due to his sentencing, it will apply to him too.
I mean, that must have been an awful feeling, and you're now with so many other victims and survivors campaigning against this decision. Many have reached out to you directly as well because of a petition you shared. What are you learning from other victims as well?
That people are just so tired of feeling silenced and having to fight this battle constantly, because we as victims and survivors get the life sentence and they get a minimum few years. The sentences aren't enough anyway, let alone for this new law to be put in place. It's heartbreaking for all of us, and there's so many it is affecting. It's disgusting and not acceptable.
But Jade, you've demonstrated your bravery so often in your life. This appalling thing happened to you when you were 14. This man was a family friend of your father's. Your parents had no idea what was going on. You were so brave in coming forward when you did and getting justice. You shouldn't have to do this again.
No, we shouldn't. No one should have to do this again. We've fought all we can, and we've done the best we can, and now to have this, it's just a further insult to us. And again, it's just not thinking of the victims and the thousands of victims that this will affect. It's not considering us at all, or the safety of the people on the streets.
Now, when we've spoken to the Ministry of Justice about this, when we've spoken to other victims and survivors in recent weeks, the MOJ have told us, look, we're going to have more probation officers and extensive tagging and licensing conditions to keep victims safe. Has that reassured you at all? No,
not in any way, shape or form. They shouldn't be out. It's as simple as that. These are the worst depraved people that they are considered. The fact that they've even considered it, let alone put it into action, is diabolical. Like, it shouldn't be happening, and tagging isn't going to stop anything. Stronger things half the time aren't followed through, so no, it's not acceptable.
Yeah, we've heard many concerns from victims about the tagging process. Does it work all the time? Lots of concerns raised there. But also the Justice Ministers, we heard from Jake Richards this morning. He said that the prison system is unravelling, potentially, and they need to make these tough decisions. But for him, it's a tough decision. For you, it's a change in your life. Do you think it's fair?
No, it's not fair at all. They need to concentrate on priorities, and a priority is keeping our streets safe and keeping victims and children and women and men safe, and letting these people out is not going to do that.
Some politicians are saying now that we should build more prisons urgently to give the space that's required and do what's necessary to ensure that these people stay behind bars. Do you support those perspectives?
I do. I 100% think that they need to prioritise building more prisons and building more space. And if people do need to be released early, then you need to consider the crime. Like, sexual abusers and predators and paedophiles, they should not be even considered in this.
And that's what most victims and survivors thought, didn't they? That they would not be affected by these changes. And we saw the early release scheme 2 Septembers ago, people coming out of prisons, they were thieves or burglars or maybe involved in lower level criminality. Few people expected it to be this, did they?
No, because at one point we were told that sexual predators wouldn't be considered. So when I received that letter, I thought that can't apply to me. It must be just a generic letter of people of crime. But the thing is, like your thieves and your burglars, yes, they have committed a crime, but they haven't served someone a life sentence. I live with that every day, and us survivors live with that every day. That's our lives completely altered. So for a thief and a burglar, they're not violent criminals. Yes, they should be behind bars, but a sex offender 100% needs to stay there a lot longer time than anyone else.
And Jade, we are expecting a new Prime Minister. Andy Burnham's almost certainly going to come in soon. There was some talk in the papers over the weekend that he also thinks that prisoners who've committed heinous sexual offences should not be released early. What's your message to Andy Burnham then, who hasn't spoken on the record about this? What do you want to hear him say, and what do you want him to do?
I plead with him to completely reverse his decision, because if he's stepping up and taking control of this country, he needs to protect the country, and this is a massive thing to protect the country. So I really plead with anyone that will listen to reverse this decision.
Obviously, he may have to wait a couple more weeks until he is Prime Minister, but he could vote today in this debate in Parliament that the Conservatives are bringing forward. What's your message to MPs who aren't Conservatives, who are considering this vote?
Again, I would plead with anyone to vote to change this decision. Anyone that will listen to us, then they need to understand the impact this is having on everyone, the victims and this country.
Jade Belgrove, very brave. Thank you so much for speaking to us today. Thank you, Jade. Well, you've heard it there. It's a plead directly to MPs, everyone involved who can come to the House of Commons today to vote on this amendment. Jade has had her say. So many other victims and survivors are putting forward that message today. They're saying they're frightened, they are exhausted, they should not have to be doing this. And we've also heard that direct plea from Jade to Andy Burnham, almost certainly the next Prime Minister, saying he must do whatever is necessary to reverse this decision. We will wait to see what happens in that vote later today.
Indeed. Charlie, thank you so much for that very emotional interview there. And please pass on our very best to Jade, a very brave young woman there. She's just 30 years old. She was raped when she was a very young 14 by a friend of the family, and she has been living with that for all her life. She grieves daily for the child she once was. There are 7,300 women like Jade who have received letters from their own government over the past couple of weeks saying, sorry about this, you might find it a bit of a problem, but we're releasing your rapist early. Go figure, that letter landing on your doormat and knowing that the person that abused you is going to be walking the streets.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News, and do stay with us. Much more on that breaking news to come, that the Reform Party leader Nigel Farage has announced he'll make a statement on his future in public life at 2 o'clock today.
But in a severe change of pace here, we all need a bit of a break, don't we, from the heavy news. If you are off on holiday, and none of us here could blame you in the slightest, here is the forecast for those top European holiday destinations.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Pretty much wall-to-wall strong sunshine across the Mediterranean for this week. Very hot too in Spain and Portugal. That heat slowly easing. Pretty warm too in the Canaries. Light winds, lots of blue sky for Spain, Portugal, for Mallorca as well, and most of Italy. Small chance of 1 or 2 showers across the east. The odd shower inland across Greece as well. But most of the Greek islands dry and sunny. Plenty more blue sky to come through the rest of this week. Temperatures easing a touch in Spain.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
You've been to see Glengarry Glen Ross.
I have. So the movie was 92 and the play was 84, 85, something like David Mamet. It's all about men, or it's about men that are posturing being men. It's this idea of sort of toxic strutting, peacocking. However, the outrage, this most male of plays, has been cast with all women. Horrific. Taking away men's jobs right in front of us, Michael. It's on at the Old Vic, and we've got a cast of the ladies having a little word about it.
I think it might explode the play and open it up in really amazing ways, but we just don't know, and that is thrilling.
On first glance, you look at Glengarry and you think male, masculine world, male toxicity, but then if you strip that away and look at it from another lens, you say, no, this is about humans.
GB News, the People's Channel. Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Joining me now is Chef Julie Walsh, who's the head of patisserie at Le Cordon Bleu.
Thank you.
How lovely to see you. You look marvellous in your chef's hat and your chef's jacket. Tell me about Le Cordon Bleu.
Le Cordon Bleu has been in operation for over 130 years. We had our 130-year anniversary last year. I'm from the campus in London, in Holborn, and we have a very wide-ranging curriculum with our students. I teach patisserie, so for me, I teach students to learn about things such as bakery, cakes, entremets, such as this one here, and showpieces. We do chocolate and sugar sculptures as well.
GB News, the People's Channel. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
3 lines on my shirt, never stop me dreaming.
Could this be England's biggest super fan? Benny Elcock has covered his York home in St George's flags in support of England ahead of the World Cup. 3 Lions memorabilia are draped across his windows, garden gates and flower pots. Even the family's Yorkshire Terrier Reggie has his own outfit.
Been doing it for years. And always stick my Everton one up, because I'm a massive Everton fan. People just think I'm mad. Say, well, you've gone a bit mad, you've gone a bit overboard. I said, I don't care. I love it.
Football mad Benny can't wait for England's first match.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is coming up to 1:45, and we are breaking the news this morning that Nigel Farage is set to make an announcement on his future in public life at 2 o'clock today. This comes following recent scrutiny over the financial support given to him by convicted fraudster George Cottrell. So please do stay with us for that breaking story. We bring as much information as we have on it. Now let's talk to GB News political editor Christopher Hope, and also we have GB News Home and Security editor Mark White in the studio. Christopher, first, do you have any more information on this story?
So I've gone through all the usual figures, very senior figures in Reform, who I know quite well. No one is speaking. They're all saying wait until 2 p.m. They've been quite formal about it. I'm not surprised when Nigel Farage announced his return to politics at 4 p.m. in one of the livery halls in London. No one knew that was happening either. In fact, the various PR people for the party were travelling in the wrong direction when it was announced. So this is not a surprise. He keeps things tight. He always keeps information tight around him. The people around him are extremely loyal to him and won't talk to me. I get that. I've got a theory, though, if you'll allow me to give the theory of what may be said, not based on any facts, but a theory. Reports in today's Telegraph say that this report into the £5 million gift from Christopher Harwood won't be ready until the autumn. Now, the report by the Commons authorities. Now, if he were found guilty, the worst they can do is kick him out of the House of Commons. He may be looking at that this morning and think, look, I can't have this for 3 more months of people knocking on doors where my family might be living, for example, although Sky deny that, or the pressure on me, the relentless questioning. I've said all I'm going to say. He may think I'm going to resign as an MP today and trigger a by-election in Clacton. That would also, I think, restart the clock on what he must disclose from 12 months to the day before he became an MP, which could mean he can start it, only disclose the period when he was an MP. He's taken a similar view with his tax affairs. I said before, will you publish your tax return, Nigel Farage? Why should I, as a private person then? But now he's an MP, that's different. So I wonder whether the reports today about the delay in this investigation into the 5 million means I'm going to preempt it, and, frankly, start a by-election and imagine the circus around that.
Are you sure that would wipe the slate?
I'm not sure on that,
Yeah.
Tom. The rules are that you start from the moment you become an MP, and it's 12 months back from that period. You've got a month to declare it. I can't believe they'll go back beyond that unless you know. But you probably do know more than I on this. But I think I'm right in saying this.
Yeah, I don't know if this has ever been tested before.
No, it won't be tested before but then again, I just wonder whether he's getting ahead of this report rather than having himself dogged by questions from journalists like us about the £5 million, the George Cottrell connection. He's going to say, right, I'm quitting, starting again. You can now ask anything you like during a by-election period, and then we start again.
And the other potential, of course, is that he decides that he is walking away. This is a man who is very, very protective of his family. He doesn't want his family being dragged in to all the controversy around him, the vitriol, the hatred that there is in some quarters over him. Doesn't want that affecting his family. To some extent, it absolutely has. He might decide enough is enough, and I'm stepping back, even just for a temporary period. And that might be a long summer holiday. We don't know.
Interesting. Chopper, if there was a by-election in Clacton, what would happen?
I think he'd win.
Do you think he'd win?
I mean, despite not being there...
He's very, very popular.
He's very popular. When he's there, he makes it known on social media. Critics say he's not there enough. Critics say he doesn't vote in the House of Commons enough. He does make no disguising how he hates the House of Commons. It works against him because he's one of 8 MPs now trying to get in. He can't get into debates. He can't even schedule his speaking slots like he could at the European Parliament. So he finds it frustrating, the current situation. He's not really part of Parliament in that sense. I think he would win, and also be a new... but it would probably find more support in the country.
Would Rupert Lowe stand against him?
Oh, my Lord. So many questions, Mark.
Highly likely that the Restore Party would stand against him. It's not also clear what it would actually prove, because I think every single journalist in the country would expect him to win that by-election, and Reform do well when they confound expectations. But I suppose there are so many possibilities as to what...
And factor in the burn and bounce as well.
if indeed that happens. Let's bring in the political commentator Matthew Stadland now. Matthew, do you have any pet theories about what we're going to hear from Nigel Farage in about 1 hour's time?
I have no access, like you guys, to what he's going to say, but I would be surprised if he actually launches a by-election, as it were, almost against himself. Listen, since 1997, when Tony Blair became Prime Minister, I think Nigel Farage has been one of the 2 most significant political figures in this country. I think there's almost no doubt about that. Boris Johnson might lay some sort of claim, but really it's been Tony Blair and Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage has helped shape our politics now for many years. Without him, there would have been no Brexit, and that was the most seismic event in British politics, probably in my lifetime. He's an extraordinary politician. Now, I stand against a lot that he stands for. But if he were to step down, if that's what he is going to announce, and we'll find out in just over an hour's time, that would be a bombshell moment for British politics. He has led, since the build-up to the last election, this insurgent party. And again, I stand against much that it stands for, but it is a remarkable political achievement that it has been consistently leading in the polls month after month, even though it still only has 8 MPs, and even though Labour came to power after 14 years of opposition. A remarkable achievement. So if he were to step down, I can't tell you how significant a moment that would be for British politics and the build-up to the next general election.
Matthew, do you personally think he should step down over this £5 million sleaze inquiry?
Well, it depends on what the parliamentary authorities find. As I say, I would be surprised if he preemptively triggers a by-election somehow to get around this inquiry. It's certainly not a good look. I've been saying this now for some time. A man of the people receiving £5 million, far more money than 99% of our population can dream of. Even if there were no issue as to whether he revealed it to Parliament or not, that is a staggering amount of money for someone whose whole image is basically built around being able to have a pint with the man and woman in the pub. So I think it's a terrible look. I think the Sunday Times piece over the weekend was also a terrible look. And don't forget, by the way, that voters really don't like hypocrisy. And you just switch the clock back 2 years. Nigel Farage was mocking Keir Starmer for the glasses that he was wearing that had been paid for by a donor. And it turns out that all along, Nigel Farage had been given this vast sum of money himself. So I think he must, on some level, recognise that this is a very, very bad look, and indeed fear that parliamentary authorities will find against him. But if you zoom out, if he were to stand down, I'm not saying reform would collapse, and Richard Tice, again, someone I disagree with profoundly on a lot, he did a pretty good job of setting things up for reform ahead of the last election when Nigel Farage took over. But I just can't see Richard Tice or indeed any of their other MPs leading reform to a general election victory. So this is a potentially gigantic moment in British politics.
I can't help but thinking, are we being marched up to the top of the hill to then be marched back down again? I just can't imagine a world where Nigel Farage resigns as the leader of, by the polls, the most popular party in the country. It'd be extraordinary.
But Tommy's talking about his future in public life, isn't he? I mean, what is he saying, if not suggesting that he might actually step down? But, I mean, listen, your viewing figures are going to go through the roof.
Sorry, we have run out of time. Matthew Stadland, thank you so much. Stay with us. We are going to bring you that announcement very soon.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Welcome along to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A hot, sunny one again across the south today. Further north, quite a bit of cloud and some rain, particularly in northern and western Scotland. That'll slowly ease through the day, but damp and drizzly over the Highlands and some of that patchy rain getting into southwest Scotland. A little bit of light rain and drizzle possible on the north coast of Northern Ireland too. The odd light shower over northeast England. It is generally cloudy across the north, plenty of sunshine further south, although some patchy cloud across parts of eastern England. Keeping the temperatures maybe a degree or so down on yesterday's, but we could still get 32, 33 Celsius across the southeast. Hot and sunny in the south. It is obviously not as hot further north where we've got more cloud. And still some outbreaks of rain coming into the Highlands and the Western Isles on and off into the evening, spreading at times into the Northern Isles as well, but should tend to ease as we go through the night. Northern Ireland seeing some breaks in the clouds, so some humid evening sunshine to enjoy across parts of the east of Northern Ireland. Northeast England also brightening up a touch. And further south, misty conditions around some of the coasts in the southwest in particular, but generally the coast is the place to be if you don't like the heat, as temperatures a bit more comfortable here with some sea breezes developing. We'll keep some outbreaks of rain going into the Highlands and the Northern Isles through the night, but otherwise it becomes largely dry nights, long clear spells. Again, might turn a bit misty around some coasts, and quite a warm one across the southeast. Temperatures in the capital may hold up at 19 degrees Celsius, elsewhere down to 15 or 16 degrees to start Wednesday. And again, we have a sunny day across the south, a hot day here, a bit more in the way of sunshine further north as well. The cloud not as thick across Northern Ireland, eastern parts of Scotland, northeast England, seeing some longer spells of sunshine tomorrow, and as a result it'll be hotter as well. Temperatures up into the mid-20s across southern Scotland and Northern Ireland, again into the low 30s once more in the strong sunshine across the south. Goodbye.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
What would you do with £60,000 cash? What would you do with a real gold bar? Well, both have to be won in our Golden Summer celebration. First, there's £60,000 in tax-free cash to bolster your bank account this year. Plus, we'll also give you a fine gold bar worth over £5,000. For a chance to win, text GOLD to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entry start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB22 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 21st of August. This is a network giveaway. Entries will be pulled. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Bo. They are under no illusion. Ray. Are you a human trafficker? Boundless.
I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get us on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What I'm going to do now, they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I've been in Westminster for a long time, but I know that though power may be here, its effect on people's lives is across the whole of the country. We may be where rules are made, but it's where they're implemented that matters. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for forthright and frank discussion on where Britain has come from, where it's going, and where it will end up. That's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Vox Populi, Vox Dei.
From cold mornings
to warm family brunches.
From football to tennis in the car.
In the kitchen.
GB News Breakfast is there. With the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business. Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
We're here again.
To start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power?
Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber.
Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics.
We'll see where this ruling takes us.
These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 1 o'clock on Tuesday, the 7th of July. I'm Dawn Neeson.
And I'm Tom Harwood.
Breaking news. Reform UK leader Nigel Farage has announced he will make a statement about his future in public life at 2 p.m. today. Conservative Party leader says Nigel Farage needs to follow the rules as a Member of Parliament.
Why does Nigel Farage want an exception? Why does he think that he is better or more important than the rest of us and he doesn't have to follow the rules? We all need to follow the rules.
Weeks of pressure about a £5 million gift from a donor are coming to a head. Nigel Farage to issue a statement on his future in public life in less than an hour. Stay tuned, this could be dramatic.
We will have all the reaction to that, and Sir Keir Starmer braces himself for rebuke at the NATO summit today as President Donald Trump is expected to challenge the Prime Minister on defence spending failures.
Well, it's clear that Donald Trump believes many European countries are still not spending enough on defence, coupled with the fact he is still smarting from what he perceives as a lack of support from Europe over the war in Iran. It could be a very interesting summit.
And MPs will vote today on whether rapists, paedophiles and grooming gang offenders should be excluded from Labour's early release scheme. The Conservatives say dangerous sex offenders should certainly stay behind bars.
Elsewhere, Prince Harry returns to Britain today as he awaits a crucial High Court ruling in his legal battle with the publisher of the Daily Mail. We'll bring you the very latest. Well, when we were planning this programme, I don't think any of us expected that we would be focusing almost singularly on a statement, a mysterious statement, that the leader of the Reform Party, Nigel Farage, is due to give in 58 minutes' time.
Yes, the news broke at just gone midday today. Nigel Farage put a statement out on social media, as everybody does these days, saying, I will make a statement on my future in public life at 2 o'clock. We obviously have no idea. I mean, we have Christopher Hope in the studio with us. Christopher, you've been talking to everybody and anybody you can get hold of. Very tight-lipped so far.
Very, and not surprisingly, when he came back to politics, having said he wouldn't fight the general election back in July 2024, he then reversed that in about 10 days. No one knew that was going to happen either. I turned up then and was in the front and for a press conference, and no one saw it coming. Richard Tice stood aside in cover of Nigel Farage. Similarly, allies of him are being extremely tight-lipped. I've talked to very, very senior figures around Nigel Farage. They are saying we are not saying anything until 2 p.m. Anything could happen. There's a theory, though, that I think could be right, that he may want to quit as an MP for Clacton and challenge his detractors to bring him down, fight again. That may restart the disclosure period from the 12 months since he becomes a new MP this time, which means he won't have to talk about the time before he became back into public life. He has always been feeling that before he became an MP was his own business, and why are you bothering about that? We're bothering about that, Nigel Farage, because the £5 million gift came during that period. He's loath to disclose that. I was really forced to when it was reported elsewhere. I wonder whether that's what's happening, because if he quits and walks away from politics, for me, Reform as a future governing party is over. The party will crash, I think, down to lower teens than mid-20s in the polls. But it's a real moment here. For me, that this party is like a start-up. It's going through various levels of funding and financing and bringing more people and more staff. And he has got to find a way of letting go of some of the hands-on work he's done there, give power to other people, run it as a more of a kind of collegiate operation rather than everything around Nigel Farage. That pressure can't last. It seems to be building up to a head. It will be extremely dramatic at 2 p.m.
People must be tearing their hair out in Reform. They've been building this juggernaut for the last 2 years, going from a tiny sort of bridgehead in Parliament to being now, for more than a year, the biggest party by the polls and controlling councils across the country and all the rest of it. The fact that one man could walk away and deflate the entire souffle, collapse the entire House of Cards, I mean, is just almost unbelievable.
Yeah.
The other theory, though, that there could be a by-election forced, I mean, that wouldn't change anything in terms of the questions that the media would still ask. We know about the £5 million. We know about the security and the lodgings and whatever else that was provided by George Cotterill. We know these things that have come to light. So what would the by-election actually sort of scorch clear?
Well, it would neutralise the issue of the £5 million gift. It would mean he's standing again, and his record would start from the time he
People would still ask him questions about that, though.
Yes, but he would say, well, I've said all I'm going to say about my life now, I'm moving on. And in fact, he would say, I've disclosed everything I have to do under the rules, which is the 12-month period going to the general election. As things stand, there's a 12-month period before he became an MP, when he was a private individual, which is open to scrutiny, and he's unwilling to give that. It would lance that boil. It would also mean, if this report doesn't come out until the autumn, it would mean he's got a chance here to try and stop further questions through this
I could readily believe, though, political opponents saying, you caused an entire by-election, spent, what is it, £350,000 of public money forcing this by-election through in order to cover up your finances. I don't think it would necessarily be a good look.
Well, he would say, I'm not covering up. He has always said, even about his own personal tax affairs, he won't publish anything when he's a private individual. He's more open about when he's an MP.
OK.
I think that's where it's coming in.
We'll have more on this one after the news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Dawn, thank you. The top stories. Breaking news. A French appeals court judge has ruled that Marine Le Pen is guilty of misusing public funds. A fine of over £74,000 is confirmed and 3 years of imprisonment with 2 suspended and 1 year with an electronic bracelet. More on this breaking news story during the show. Elsewhere, Reform UK leader Nigel Farage has posted on social media saying he will be making an announcement this afternoon about his future in public life. It follows reports about donations to the Reform UK leader and his declarations of them. Mr Farage argues he was not obliged to declare any of the benefits under Commons rules and has done nothing wrong. Well, scrutiny over Mr Farage's finances began earlier this year after it emerged he'd received a £5 million gift from a Thailand-based British cryptocurrency investor in April of 2024 before he entered Parliament. US President Donald Trump has landed in Turkey ahead of the NATO summit in Ankara as his growing criticism continues to strain the 77-year-old alliance. NATO's chief says US allies have made remarkable progress, with defence spending a salient issue for Mr Trump, who has called on them to step up. It could be a difficult summit for Sir Keir Starmer after the US warned allies they're not spending enough on defence. Officials pointed to a £15 billion boost to defence spending in last week's defence investment plan, saying Mr Starmer would use the summit to demonstrate how we're turning the pledges into action.
Meanwhile, Kemi Badenoch says silly season is not for the people running the country, as she hit out at her political rivals. Speaking at a rally in central London this morning about defence funding, Mrs Badenoch also said Andy Burnham wants a summer holiday, Mr Farage is in hiding and Starmer is retiring. The Duke of Sussex will begin a week of engagements having returned to the UK. He'll also find out the result of a court case that the Prince and others brought against the publishers of the Daily Mail with claims of unlawful information gathering. A&L strongly denies those claims. It comes as Harry's accommodation arrangements for his UK visit descended into chaos ahead of 5 days of appearances in London and Birmingham. The Duke won't be staying at Buckingham Palace during his return, with his spokesman saying it was disappointing the offer from the King was withdrawn at the last moment, with the looming judgment given as the reason. In other news, the prisons watchdog says it'll keep a close eye on criminals released early from jail under a government scheme amid concerns rapists could be among them. From September, part of the Sentencing Act 2026 will come into force, enabling some offenders to be freed earlier in a bid to reduce overcrowding. Reports do suggest killers, rapists and sex offenders could be among up to 6,000 criminals released early in a few months' time. The Shadow Justice Minister Kieran Mullen spoke to GB News Breakfast.
We should have built more prisons during our time in office. We actually built more than 10,000, but a lot of them also went out of use. But this is a distraction from the government because, as I said, there are existing schemes that allow you to release prisoners in the short term in a crisis. What the government's actually doing is making a permanent change to our justice system to allow some of these worst offenders to get out of prison earlier. I don't think that's right, and I think they're deliberately confusing the public about the short-term challenge that we've got and the long-term changes they want to make, which I don't think the public would support, of letting out serious offenders like rapists and grooming gang perpetrators out of prison earlier.
And in sport, the USA have been eliminated from the World Cup following a 4-1 defeat to Belgium. The contest had been dominated by the controversy surrounding US striker Folarin Balogun, who became eligible for selection and featured from the start after his red card ban was suspended by FIFA following intervention by the US president.
It's one thing to penalise somebody for the game, but how do you penalise them for a game that hasn't been played yet? It's very unfair. You can't do that. So yes, I asked for a review by FIFA.
It came to no use, though, as Belgium won that game and they meet Spain next, who'd earlier eliminated Cristiano Ronaldo's Portugal. Ronaldo told reporters that Spain enjoyed a bit of luck to score through substitute Marino in the dying moments of a match he felt could have swung either way. Those are the latest headlines. More in half an hour.
You can now watch GB News live across the United States of America and the world on Truth Plus. Scan the QR code to find out more or visit gbnews.com/truth.
Good afternoon, Britain. At 11 minutes past 1, that means it's only 49 minutes to go until Nigel Farage's big speech. Yes, that's the breaking news in the last hour.
Yes, Nigel Farage has indeed announced that he will be making a statement on his future in public life at 2 o'clock this afternoon.
Well, it comes as the Reform Party leader faces intense scrutiny over financial support given to him by the convicted fraudster George Cottrell.
We're joined in the studio now by GB News political editor Christopher Hope and GB News Home and Security editor Mark White, the A-team on this story. Christopher, you have been trying to get a response as to find out more what is going to be announced. Are we any wiser?
No, we're not. Absolute radio silence. No surprise, though. They're all saying wait till 2 p.m. Not a surprise, because whenever Farage does something dramatic and big, few people outside the tiny team around him know about it. When he came back to Parliament after saying he wouldn't fight a seat in the 2024 general election, no one knew that was happening. I mean, I was there in the front row of the press conference, but it wasn't signalled at all or telegraphed, even to people within Reform UK. Well, there are theories abounding, and we can use theories now for the next hour or so. Reports in today's Telegraph saying that a report into the £5 million gift he received from Christopher Harwood won't be ready by parliamentary authorities until the autumn. He may want to get ahead of that because that report could lead to an investigation which could kick him out as an MP and force him into a by-election. He may think, let's just lance the boil now, have a by-election, I'll be returned as MP for Clacton. He could withdraw from Parliament altogether. He does say he hates House of Commons, doesn't work for him, and become just the head of reform and then fight a seat at the general election away from scrutiny. I mean, the scrutiny will still come, as Tom was saying in the past hour, but he won't be obliged to declare it under the rules of Parliament not being an MP. It could also reset the 12-month period before you become an MP when you must declare information by doing that. There's no question, though, that he is losing supporters. The Daily Telegraph, which is supportive and has been of Nigel Farage in the past, makes clear, I think, to me, that he's got to do something. They quote Harry Truman about if you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. He was doorstepped over the weekend, or maybe yesterday, by reporters when he was in America, and then he got very cross on camera with the crew, saying, "You've been harassing my family." The broadcaster denies that, but clearly the pressure is getting to him. Something's got to give. Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader, she's been talking about the £5 million gift this morning. Here's what she said.
I had to make declarations day in, day out of people who are giving donations and gifts or whatever, so that people can see where the money is coming from. Why does Nigel Farage want an exception? Why does he think that he is better or more important than the rest of us and he doesn't have to follow the rules? We all need to follow the rules. So yes, if he did receive benefits and gifts in kind, then he should declare them. Why does he not want to do that? He keeps saying that he's a man of the people. No man of the people, as far as I know, gets £5 million cash as a gift for no reason whatsoever. And the reason why these stories and these scandals keep pursuing him is because he won't do what everybody else does, is come out and answer the questions properly. Telling people that it's none of their business means that the stories will continue. There will continue to be questions asked. He should just come out and be straight with people. That's what I do all the time.
I think she's got a point, Kemi Badenoch, there. She says saying it's none of our business doesn't wash. It is our business who runs our country. It is our business knowing who donates to them. It happens for all parties. When Keir Starmer received gifts from Lord Ali, he was rightly mocked by Nigel Farage then. He can't have his cake and eat it. And just finally, my view on reform is this party wasn't meant to be this big so quickly. It's got over 200,000 members. It's got far more money than the major parties pulled in donations. It's like a startup which hasn't yet changed from the original startup structure. It needs to change. He needs to let go of some influence in the party, but keep running it. If he walks away, the party collapses, Tom and Dawn.
Now, to pour some cold water on the by-election theory, not to say it won't happen, but just that it won't wipe away some of these problems. John McTernan, who often comes on this show and, of course, was a former senior advisor in Number 10, he's saying simply being re-elected in a by-election doesn't affect an existing investigation and it doesn't mitigate any sanctions. And it's worth remembering that Boris Johnson, when he resigned as MP for Uxbridge, the Privileges Committee continued their investigation and about a month later published their finding. That's when we got all the photographs that we saw in that report.
He can't surely order another by-election after the one he's just had. I mean, that would be bonkers, wouldn't it, Tom?
Well,
or would it be a second by-election?
It would be an expulsion from the House. It would necessitate a
But he can stand again, can't he?
It wouldn't necessitate him to stand again or otherwise.
But he can stand again, can't he?
He could, yeah.
So it could trigger a third by-election in Clacton, Tom?
Well, a second by-election, yeah.
Right, OK. Christopher Hope, thank you so much for that. And if you are just joining us at our just gone 1:15, we are talking about the announcement by Nigel Farage today that he will make a public statement on a statement on his future in public life at 2 o'clock today. We are obviously covering that. Let's bring Mark White, our home and security editor, into the conversation. Mark, you have spent a lot of time working with Nigel Farage, certainly on the small boats crisis. Now, this is triggered by him losing his temper, and I think that's a fair comment, with a Sky News reporter at an airport the other day, and he did actually lose his temper. Just tell us a little bit about what's it like working with Nigel Farage. I've never seen him lose his temper in that way. How important is that?
I have to say, I've never seen Nigel Farage as angry as I did on that confrontation on camera, is what we should call it, where a Sky News reporter asks him about the money, the donation, the gift. He responds. It's clear. I mean, there's rage in his face. He's very angry indeed. But then, as he walks away, and quite some distance away, there's another question shouted at Nigel Farage, and he comes back even more angry and accusing Sky of knocking on the door of his family members. So he's clearly very, very angry about the way this has unfolded. Reading, you know, at face value what he has posted out on social media about this statement, you would be forgiven for concluding this is a man who's decided he's had enough, he's going to walk away. We know with Reform and with Nigel Farage, nothing is ever that clear-cut, so it may well turn out to be something different at 2 o'clock. We just don't know. But he has been very protective of his family. And I don't think you can overstate just how he, and of course then, as a consequence of that, family members will have felt very pressured by what's going on. Yeah. Now, Nigel Farage has said for some time that he believes the establishment will be out to get him, is out to get him. The way he's dealing with that is not to engage with them and be dismissive of their questions, but it's really just adding to more questions and more pressure, and you can see that's taking its toll.
Yes, okay. Mark White, thank you for now. We'll be coming back to Mark on that statement from Nigel Farage, which we are expecting. But for now, let's cross it live to central London, where Prince Harry has just arrived.
Yeah, Dawn, Tom, hopefully we can show you some pictures just happening in the last couple of seconds here at Chatham House in central London of the Duke of Sussex arriving in a single Range Rover here in central London. He was... judgment in his case against the Daily Mail. A number of photographers swarmed forward to his car to take photographs of him. Harry was all smiles, actually. He looks like in good spirits. He also turned around to look at the swarm of media that's assembled here outside Chatham House. He gave a smile and a wave, so he didn't look particularly upset. We're not sure if he's actually seen the judgment in question yet, which is expected at 2 o'clock today. He, of course, is here as part of a countdown to the Invictus Games Foundation taking place in 2027 in Birmingham. It's a conference today. Lots of ministers, both from here in the UK and indeed Ukraine, veterans ministers, a number of serving soldiers and indeed veterans who are going to be telling their story of how Invictus has helped them. We're expecting Prince Harry to also be delivering a speech, but of course all eyes on that judgment taking place at 2 o'clock today.
Oh, Cameron Walker, thank you indeed. Just from your vantage point, seeing Prince Harry walking in, can you get anything from his mood? I know we only saw him for a couple of seconds, but is this a confident man?
He looked confident, Tom. He looks like he was smiling. Of course, that could be for show. We're not, maybe a bit of a poker face. We're not entirely sure. We're not going to know for certain until 2 o'clock whether or not he's won his case against the publisher of the Mail and the Mail on Sunday. As I said, the fact that he looks at the journalists who had assembled here in this fixed point, cameras from right around the world, and smiled and waved, perhaps will tell you something. I don't know. I'm just speculating. But he didn't look like he was in a bad mood, put it that way. He looked like he was either in a good mood or showing a pretty good poker face. And of course, he's now inside. He will be delivering a speech as well, and of course I'm going to jump inside too and see if I can get a sense of his body language, and of course we'll bring that straight to you ahead of that judgment as well.
Cameron Walker, for now, thank you so much. With lots of things happening on today's show. Yeah. Stunning amounts of breaking news. We are expecting to hear from Nigel Farage on that statement he is making. We expect round about 2 o'clock on his on his personal future.
Absolutely. 2 o'clock seems to be the pivotal moment of today.
Yeah.
Well, lots more, of course, still to come on this programme. We will be hearing that statement as it happens now in just 40 minutes' time. All of that and much more to come. Do stay with us. You're on GB News, Britain's #1 news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Some people enjoy lazy Sunday mornings, but not me.
What's the truth of the matter? So that's a very live question. Would you support him if he waters down these plans?
Before the spin sets in, I'll be getting to the truth.
This is personal.
No soft questions, no easy answers.
It's one thing if the state has rules in this country. It's another thing whether the police and others actually police them.
Setting the agenda and holding those in power to account.
You can't really blame her if the system is set up this way.
You will not want to miss it, trust me. The Camilla Tominey Show, Sundays from 9:30, only on GB News.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
As soon as it hits 11 and the headlines come in,
the Late Edition brings you the breaking news from all the front pages.
Because the news is going to happen.
So get a head start today.
Patrick Christie's tonight, Late Edition.
Alex Armstrong tonight, Late Edition. From 11 o'clock every night.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At the stroke of midnight, the news doesn't stop, and neither do we.
Day in, day out. Forget stuffy late-night TV shows. We're giving you a front-row ticket to the centre of the political universe.
Because breaking news doesn't wait for the morning.
And neither do we. Join us for one of the most controversial and volatile times of politics in human history.
A very big story.
Big story over here.
You won't get this anywhere else. The Late Show live at midnight, every night.
Only on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is coming up to 25 minutes past 1 and Nigel Farage has announced he will be making an announcement this afternoon about his future in public life.
Well, it comes after the Reform Deputy Leader Richard Tice insisted voters had shown they were not concerned by rows over Nigel Farage's finances.
We're joined now by political commentator David Shipley. David, dramatic announcement, just 2 lines on social media about this announcement that's happening at 2 o'clock, although we're hearing it might be slightly later than 2 o'clock now. What do you think he's going to say?
Well, I'm going to put my neck on the line on this one, I suppose, and say I don't think he's going to quit. I think I think he's going to come out and respond to and challenge these accusations, and you know, clearly he's made it clear he's very angry about the way that his daughter's home has been approached by Sky News journalists. I imagine he's going to come out fighting about that.
Sky News, of course, denies that his daughter's home was approached by their journalists. Do you think he'll have evidence on that?
I mean, I would assume he's not making that claim lightly, and I think there seem to be some suggestions that Sky are briefing some details around this privately as well. So I think he'll want to address that, and he'll no doubt want to talk about all the media claims in the Sunday Times over the last few days as well.
Simon, he hasn't done until now. Sorry, David, he hasn't done until now. What makes you think he's going to finally come out and clear the air on this?
I think he has to. You know, I think otherwise these sorts of criticisms and attacks will just roll on. And I think Nigel Farage has to come out and say, you know, either he has to account for them and make it clear that he's not going to be pushed out. Otherwise, this will just roll on. We've seen that the investigation may well last until September, so it's going to take up a whole load of time and energy. I think he needs to try to nip that in the bud.
This is going to be a very pivotal speech because there has been so much now built up around it. Some people suggesting he's going to resign. Some people suggesting he'll take a leave of absence. Others saying there'll be a by-election called in Clacton. I mean, can it really be that all he will do is make a sort of barnstorming challenge to the media and then say that's it?
I mean, I'm not privy to the speech, I should say, but this is entirely my speculation. But I think if he quits over this, that would be a terrible, terrible shame for reform, and I think it would, naturally also show that these kinds of criticisms and attacks from the press can take reform leaders out. So that would be I think, a real problem for the dissident right. Is there any value in calling a by-election? Maybe. I mean, I think in Clacton he would almost certainly win, even if all the other parties stood aside to let Restore have a crack at defeating him or something like that. But what's the value of it? I mean, sure, he gets re-elected. Maybe then he can say that his constituents have voted for him again, knowing about this. But other than that, I mean, I think all he can really do is come out swinging. He has to, surely.
And David, obviously, 2 questions. I mean, if he does do that, how far will it go to restoring his reputation with the people that are sort of like not sure about reform but edging towards voting for him? And how damaging have these allegations been previously?
It's really interesting. My sense from talking to lots of reform voters and supporters over the last few days is I don't think any reform voters have been deterred by this. I think you're right. It's the waverers. It's maybe the people who are deciding between the Tories and reform who might find themselves slightly put off by this sort of reporting. And I think that is what he needs to address, because really to win the next general election with a comfortable majority, what reform need to do is take another 4 or 5 points away from the Tories, and then they start to get to into the 30s, which we know from the last general election, when you've got a divided rest of the parties, it's enough to win a good majority.
And yet, of course, Reform have been sliding away from that sort of magic, shall we call it, a 35% threshold. That's the strategy Ed Miliband pursued in 2015. They've been getting further away from it rather than closer to it. Do you think, David, that Nigel Farage has got a bit of a blind spot here in his response to some of these criticisms over his own personal finances? Because he's usually very, very good at spotting where the public is on this stuff, whether it's the Lord Arley scandal for Labour politicians, which he himself mocked mercilessly. Even though it was technically within the rules, the public clearly thought that it was dodgy and wrong for freebies to be given to politicians. There's a sort of direct analogy, because what Nigel Farage is saying to this or these stories about his own personal finances is, it's within the rules, I'm confident I'll be cleared, I can't believe you're going after this, but there is just something that the public hates about very wealthy people giving a lot of money to politicians.
I think it's slightly more nuanced. I think part of the reason it landed so badly at the beginning of this government, when we had all these scandals, is because Labour was so holier than thou before they came into power, and they were very sanctimonious, roundheads really. And there's none of that in Farage, or really in Reform more broadly. They're much more of a cavalier party. And I think that sanctimony and the hypocrisy is actually what people really dislike. So I suspect people will generally be more forgiving of this sort of stuff around Nigel Farage than they were around Keir Starmer, because Farage has never tried to say that he's going to be holier than thou.
And if he does decide to step down, maybe temporarily, we don't know. I mean, evidently, just reading some information on here that hints were dropped this morning that he is going to quit and run again, triggering that by-election. Who would take over as caretaker? Would it be Mr Tice?
I mean, presumably he would stay as leader if he was running a by-election. I think it's a good question who would actually take over if Nigel Farage was going to be absent from the party for a sustained period of time. I think a lot of people would be very supportive of Zia Yusuf, but of course he doesn't sit in Parliament currently. So presumably Richard Tice would step in that situation.
I mean, this is getting into the realm of wild speculation now, because it would just seem like the most extraordinary own goal for a party that has now for more than a year sat at the top of public opinion polls. But crucially, it does seem like that this is a wide-open flank for Reform that is being attacked and attacked. David Shipley, thanks indeed for joining us and talking through that. We're just ending this interview slightly abruptly because we're going to go straight to Ankara because Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, still seems to be arriving for the NATO summit, his last big summit as Prime Minister. And there is the British plane on the tarmac at Ankara Airport, not far from where we just saw Air Force One, Donald Trump arriving perhaps an hour before Keir Starmer arriving there. Let's see if we can get those pictures back up. The Prime Minister arriving there in Ankara for what will be a testing summit over all matters defence.
We certainly do. And we still have Mark White in the studio with us. Mark, we can see our current Prime Minister landing there in Ankara for this NATO meeting. And Trump has already been very strongly spoken about how NATO is not spending the money, or many countries in NATO are not spending the money that he wants them to spend. How easy is this going to be for Keir Starmer?
Well, it could potentially be very difficult. Let's see how President Trump is when they're face-to-face. He's normally not as abrasive when they're face-to-face. Let's see what kind of mood he's in at the moment. Remember, Donald Trump is facing a lot of scrutiny and criticism over that intervention that he made over the World Cup red card for that American football player. So he might be looking for some distraction techniques, throw a few stun grenades into the NATO summit. My first observation here, looking at these pictures, though, is, you know, our plane, it's not quite as impressive as this new Air Force One, gifted by the Qataris. I'd love a look inside that to see just how plush they've made it. Because remember, it was gifted as an interim Air Force One for Donald Trump. It's been kitted out with everything that he needs. This is part of that fleet, I think, of the Royal Air Force aircraft that have the livery of the Union flag on the tail fin there and can be reconfigured as various other aircraft as well for the RAF at other times. But he's there. Let's see how Sir Keir Starmer is during his last hurrah. He clearly feels that he has been very effective on the world stage, that is where his strengths have lain over the last couple of years that he has been Prime Minister. The truth of it may be somewhat different, though, because I think it was starkly exposed when we saw the Defence Secretary, John Healey, the Armed Forces Minister, Al Kans, deciding that they were going to resign because everything that this Prime Minister had said about just how much was being invested in our defences was not as it seems, clearly, and then some. If it forces senior cabinet ministers such as the Defence Secretary to fall on his sword for the good of the nation and our defences. So that, I'm sure, it's not gone unnoticed. Of course it hasn't, by the US. What will Donald Trump say about that? Because if we look in pure terms of GDP, the growth of a nation versus how much they're spending on their defence, we've gone way, way down towards the bottom of the nations, and the European nations in particular, within NATO. In terms of just pure monetary terms, how much we're spending on defence, within Europe, we're still about, the European NATO nations, we're up there about number 3. In terms of our expenditure. So we're still spending a lot of money, but not nearly enough as far as Donald Trump is concerned. And there's also the other issue, and I wonder whether this will be exposed by Donald Trump during this summit, around this 5% mark that Mark Rutte, the Secretary General of NATO, wants these countries to get to over the coming years, because at least 1.5% of that is actually not core defence spending at all. It's what they call sort of resilience. So it can be anything from roads and rail infrastructure to energy, and nothing that would, you know, any person looking at it would conclude is actually core military spending. So a bit of a fudge and a bit of a cheat, many might say,
Giorgia
including
Meloni
Trump.
in Italy famously built a bridge and said that was part of our defence spending.
Yeah, but I'm really, really excited about just what is going to happen with Giorgia Meloni and Donald Trump during this summit, because you remember they had that spectacular fallout because Donald Trump has been clearly very, very chastened and angry at the way that the European NATO partners have not done all they could, in his eyes, to help in his war effort in Iran. In particular, the UK and Italy denying America the use of these American bases. For Italy, it was that American base in Sicily, and of course, a couple of air bases in the UK, and Diego Garcia, that Trump was denied the ability to use to prosecute his war against Iran. So he was very, very angry at that move by the Europeans. He may well decide that this is a bit of retribution during the NATO summit. And as I say, one of the because he was clearly so angry with Giorgia Meloni, he said at that, remember that G7 summit just a few weeks back, that she was dying to have a selfie with him to boost her own support within Italy, and that, of course, she took the bait, which she should never do with Donald Trump. And now he's posted this latest message on Truth Social with a picture of an adoring Giorgia Meloni looking up at him and saying that a restraining order is required. So it'll be interesting to see what the family photos with them are like.
I mean, also interesting in the family photo, our own Prime Minister, this is now his final international visit. He's loved going on international visits over his not quite 2 years as Prime Minister. And he has been seen to be perhaps a little obsequious in earlier visits, you know, bending down to pick up the papers of Donald Trump, a famous image that still haunts him now. Might he be a little bit less toading this time round? Might he be a bit Love Actually?
Oh, I knew you were going to say that. It's going to be his Hugh Grant moment. I think everything we know about Sir Keir Starmer tells us absolutely not. But it is quite fitting that Never Hear Keir should, you know, his last big set piece should be an overseas set piece as well here at the NATO summit. As I say, he believes he's been a very effective leader on the world stage. That will be for the historians, perhaps, to mull over in the fullness of time.
Now, Mark, we're looking on screen at live pictures of Donald Trump meeting President Erdogan of Turkey, shaking hands for a very long time for the photographs there, just before their quick bilateral. So they're sitting down, of course, Erdogan hosting this summit in Ankara. But there are talks of lots of deals being done between America and Turkey, particularly over fighter jets.
No, it's fascinating. So Recep Tayyip Erdogan is a strong man, and he's someone that President Trump really admires. He said so publicly on multiple occasions. And yes, there's all sort of talks of missile and equipment deals, you know, with Turkey and others. I mean, this may be also a bit of leverage that the US president might have going forward in terms of those nations within Europe, part of NATO, that he does not think are stepping up to the plate and investing enough in defence. They go to the back of the queue, potentially, when it comes to buying some of the vital armaments that they might need from the US. So we'll see how that plays out. I don't know if Donald Trump is speaking. He normally actually chats at these events as well. He is, you know, the most sort of available president. Even those within the global media who profess to hate Donald Trump, I think will certainly miss the fact that this individual
I think that's the Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper alongside the Prime Minister Keir Starmer walking down the stairs there from the British plane, being given some flowers by Turkish diplomats ahead of this summit.
Do you think they were meant for Yvette?
Well, yes, probably.
Just asking the question here. But he seems very happy to have accepted them.
Yeah, listen, I know Turkey quite well. They're not that woke, so they're not going to be giving a bunch of flowers to a man. So I think you're right in that observation.
Someone has now taken the flowers away, so the Prime Minister is not lumbered with them as he shakes hands with various diplomats and armed forces personnel. But this is, of course, a strictly stage-managed affair. It's not just about the deals that are done behind the scenes. It's how a country projects itself on the world stage too.
And I think it's very interesting, Mark, that Trump likes strong men in particular. I mean, we do know that. I mean, speaking at the weekend, he said that weak British leaders had allowed the country to become a deindustrialised welfare zone, unable to stop third world men arriving on boats. I mean, if you were Keir Starmer, you'd want to go in and say, hold on a minute, mate, what do you mean? But he won't. He'd just take a bunch of flowers, won't he?
Well, you know, I'm sure many people would love to see him actually, you know, stand up, grow a backbone and stand up to Donald Trump, and maybe Donald Trump would actually respect that because, as you say, he does respect strength. But what I find fascinating as well by what we're seeing there, which is an outgoing Prime Minister coming down the stairs with a Foreign Secretary who doesn't know whether she'll be in or out of a job under a Burnham government as well. So we could have two totally irrelevant senior figures within British government going to represent the British government at an event which in a couple of weeks' time, who knows actually what Andy Burnham will do in terms of the defence of the realm. We know that Donald Trump has already spoken briefly in comments, you know, when he was asked about Andy Burnham, saying that we know he's a Liberal. So let's see how he gets on with Andy Burnham, and let's see whether Andy Burnham is true to some of the comments that he's made, that he will see through the defence investment plan and make sure that currently that £5 billion black hole is filled.
Mark White for now, thank you so much. OK, now Nigel Farage is set to make an announcement on his future in public life at 2 o'clock today. It comes following recent scrutiny over the financial support given to him by convicted fraudster George Cotterill.
Well, we're joined now by the political commentator David Wooding. David, a huge amount of speculation on what on earth it is Nigel Farage is going to say. What are you hearing?
Well, I won't add to the speculation. I've been listening to it with some smiles on my face about the various things that he might be doing. One, that speculation I heard at the weekend in a Westminster bubble party was that he was going to resign at some stage and then come back on a white charger just before the election, leaving Richard Tice to run the party for a couple of years and then come back and give them a big bounce like Andy Burnham was given to the Labour Party. But who knows? Where there's Nigel Farage, there's always speculation. What's clear, Tom, is that he has been a little bit rattled over the past few weeks by a number of things. First of all, that defeat in Makerfield, I think that's had more of an impact than any of us have taken on board, because they were expected to win that before Andy Burnham arrived on the scene, and they'd in fact won 8 seats in local wards on the Makerfield local council election for Wigan Borough. Apart from the Brexit vote, where 65-66% voted in favour of leave, so he's very popular there. So he does seem to be a little bit diminished recently. There have also been rumours about whether he's jaded, tired, or ill even. So it'll be interesting to see what he says. Undoubtedly, he will take this all head on, and whatever he comes out with will be delivered with his usual punchiness.
David, talking of punchiness, what do you make of his reaction to when Sky News confronted him at the airport? I mean, you know, you've worked, you know, and observed Nigel Farage for a long time. I don't think I've ever seen him that genuinely angry.
No, it was a bit difficult, really, because I think a lot of his supporters, his diehard supporters, don't really care, and they agree with his responses that this isn't, he's done nothing wrong, and why shouldn't he get some money for some protection, and it was a private gift. That a lot of people take it all on board and factor that into their support for Nigel Farage. However, when you're in front of the cameras, it's always well to behave in a measured, calm way. And it didn't come over very well, that. So perhaps things are getting to him a little bit.
I mean, this does seem like the most extraordinary move to make, if indeed there is some sort of step back, just at the point when Reform has been ahead in the polls for I don't know how long, more than a year, certainly. They've won dozens of councils across the country. Surely he's not going to resign. Well,
surely not. I mean, this is the difficulty for him. While he's dodging the cameras because of these questions that dog him everywhere he goes, that's having an impact not only on him but on Reform itself. Because, as we all know, he is a charismatic, well-liked leader of that party. And he is, in fact, he's described as a one-man band by many people. While he's not being shunted in front of the cameras, Reform is suffering, not getting its message over in the same way, despite the efforts of Robert Jenrick and Richard Tice, who are both good Reform performers. Nigel Farage is the face, the figurehead of this party. And while he's not there, he might as well not be there at all. So it will be interesting to see whether he steps back. And if he does step back, it will be a massive blow. But we've seen this happen before, and he's always come back. He can't resist it.
Indeed, absolutely. It'd be fascinating to see what he actually does say. David Wooding, thank you so much for joining us on that one. And
my favourite resignation of Nigel Farage, I think in 2016 he stepped down for a period of about 10 days and then he was back again.
My favourite resignation by Nigel Farage. He has done it before, to be fair, but...
Yeah, no, he's... I'm trying to think of a metaphor for something continually returns, but, you know, we'll get to that after the break. There's lots more coming up on Good Afternoon Britain. Indeed, yes, that breaking news that the Reform Party leader Nigel Farage has announced that he will make a statement about his future in around 10 minutes' time. Don't move a muscle.
Good Afternoon Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Yeah, Cameron, Miriam, it's certainly feeling hot here today, 30 degrees, and it's only going to get hotter, of course, across the country. Many people feeling the heat as well. Those red weather warnings for extreme heat in place, saying that this heat could even cause a risk to life, urging people to take precautions. But spare a thought for people working in this heat, particularly those in kitchens. We can't come to the beach without a fish and chip shop. This is the Modern World Fish and Chip Shop in Brighton, and Ibrahim runs it. Ibrahim, just how hot is it inside your kitchen today?
It's an absolute scorcher, actually. It's okay. We're just about coping. We're taking precautions. We reduced one fry from 2 fries. We're down to 1. There's not much sales in food at the moment. It's mostly people trying to keep hydrated. Waters, soft drinks, ice creams, beers.
GB News, the People's Channel. GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
And the reason why Alex's head is a little bit sore this morning is because we are Trick Award winners.
Yes.
Again. For the 4th year in a row. We're absolutely delighted, aren't we? We're buzzing with this.
We are. And, yeah, I need some more sleep.
Listen to that voice. You sound like Orson Welles.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Hey, everybody. Got a very
Alex went
sultry voice today.
Yeah, you sound good. You sound good.
Okay,
but you went for celebratory drinks last night, didn't you?
Yeah, you could put it that way.
Yeah.
You could put it celebratory
How's
drinks.
the head this morning?
Yeah, I think that the hangover's coming. Let's put it that way. Hangover is still due.
Oh, there you are. Look, there we
look.
are. GB News Breakfast winner. So it was in the news category yesterday, and we are absolutely delighted that you chose us because it is voted for by you.
GB News, the People's Channel. GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Well, that is the question. Good morning to you both. It is very hot. Right now it's 25 degrees. Ordinarily it might be this temperature about midday, but no, it's 8 o'clock in the morning. It's 25 degrees and temperatures set to soar throughout the day into the mid-30s. If it gets higher than 35.1 degree today, then today will be the hottest day of the year. Many people forecasting that we could reach that threshold today. So that's one to look out for. But as you can see, many people keeping cool today. Somebody's here in the water. We've got people out to sea swimming as well, and many on the shoreline enjoying this hot weather, including John here. I can speak to now. John, thanks for joining us this morning on GB News. Have you been in the sea yet? How are you keeping cool?
Yeah, I went in the sea. We were down about 7 o'clock this morning. Literally dived straight in.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's just gone 10 to 2.
Yes, now Nigel Farage is set to make an announcement on his future in public life at around 2 o'clock today.
Well, it comes as rival parties call for a parliamentary probe after it emerged that the Reform Party did not declare benefits provided by a convicted fraudster.
Yes, so we're now joined by Deputy Online Editor of The Critic, Tom Jones. Tom, good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us. We have no idea. We can't get any more information out of anybody. Have you heard anything behind the scenes about what this announcement could be?
Well, it's always hard to know. One of the interesting things about Reform is, compared to the conventional parties, they tend to be very, very, very tight-lipped. They're actually, they're not a particularly leaky ship, unlike the Conservatives or Labour. So it's very difficult to know, but the presumption seems to be that there will be a by-election. Personally, I find that quite difficult to believe. I think that's an incredibly high-risk strategy, given that all the parties will throw everything they have at the seat. But there's only one way to tell with Farage, and that's usually to wait it out.
And with this by-election idea, Clacton is the most demographically favourable seat to the Reform Party. That's why Nigel Farage picked it in 2024 and won it hands down. But now there's another party to the right of Reform called Restore, and this seat is equally demographically favourable to Restore. You can see Restore getting 10% in this seat. You could see the Tories getting 10 to 15 to 20%. You could see the Reform vote really being split. I mean, it's unclear what a by-election would actually do for Farage.
Exactly. I think one of the interesting things about the Makerfield by-election that your last guest mentioned was actually the share of the right-wing vote was broadly the same as the previous election in 2024, but it was the breakdown that changed. So the Conservatives became the smallest party. Reform grew their vote just a little bit. And Restore overtook the Conservatives as the second party. But I think in this election, with it being Farage, you will see both Restore and the Conservatives throw everything they've got at this seat, particularly Restore, I think, which is basically based on a personal animosity of the leadership towards Nigel Farage.
And, of course, the leader represents a seat just down the road, up the coast of East Anglia. I'm afraid that's all we've got time for, but Tom Jones, thanks indeed for joining us. We're going to go straight to Christopher Hope, who's joining us live from Westminster. Christopher, what can you tell us as we're just in the minutes before this statement?
From what I'm hearing, I don't think Nigel Farage is quitting as the leader of Reform. That could be proved wrong. What I'm told by sources is that he has had enough of the attacks by the left-wing press, as they see it, left-wing media, and he'll come out fighting against them. It could well be there could be some form of resignation as an MP to refight this by-election in Clacton. But the theme of this statement at 2 o'clock sounds like it'll be he's drawing a line on the attacks of the media. He seems to be particularly upset by other broadcast outlets, not GB News, I should say, knocking on the door of some of the properties he's said to own, meeting members of his family that may have happened in recent days. And that, I think, is what's triggered this statement from Nigel Farage. Of course, he's away at the weekend meeting JD Vance in Washington. And that's maybe why he mentioned, I think, in his anger in that clip on social media, the idea of a Leveson inquiry, which we don't think is party policy reform, but we wait to be told on that. It will be an attack on the left-wing media, the establishment, trying to bring him down. Given all that, I can't see him resigning as reform leader, because that would be giving in to the opponents who are trying to bring him down. Having said that, though, I wonder whether there could be some form of election or by-election in his role as Clacton. That's where I'm sitting at the moment, Tom and Dawn.
Christopher, just quickly and finally, it's not just the left-wing media now. The Telegraph, which has supported Nigel Farage through all of this controversy, is having a go at him today as well. So it's not just the left-wing media we're talking about now.
Well, no, and I don't think, by the way, when I say left-wing media, or that's the language being used by people at Reform, I think it's perfectly acceptable to ask him about a £5 million gift from Christopher Harwood, the crypto millionaire. That is not a problem. That is what we should be asking of any politician who purports to govern us. That's not left-wing media asking that. That's all of us. I think there are other things happening behind the scenes at Reform that we don't fully know about, Dawn and Tom, and that could be part of it. We'll know in full what's happening at 2 p.m, just 4 minutes away.
Well, Christopher Hope, thank you very much indeed. I know you'll be listening to this statement as intently as we all will be. Stay with us here on GB News as we await the statement that could define Nigel Farage's career and indeed much of our politics for the years to come. That will be live here on GB News in just a couple of minutes' time.
We're celebrating a golden summer with your chance to win a real gold bar. That's right, a fine gold bullion bar worth over £5,000 could be yours. We're also going to make sure your finances are fabulous with £60,000 in tax-free cash. For a chance to win, text GOLD to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entry start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB22 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 21st of August. This is a network giveaway. Entries will be pulled. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Do you trust what you're being told? Good, because neither do I.
Those are just facts.
I'm Alex Armstrong, and on my show, we'll expose the spin.
Well, I want to answer that, because you didn't let me last time, because you always speak over me.
The broken promises.
To deny that is denying the truth.
And the hypocrisy.
We can allow.
Stop.
We can allow.
Politics, policy, parliament. Nothing is off limits. No sugarcoating, no fear of offence, just the truth laid bare. Tune in every Saturday and Sunday at 9 p.m. for Alex Armstrong Tonight, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
As soon as it hits 11 and the headlines come in,
Late Edition brings you the breaking news from all the front pages.
because the news is going to happen.
So get a head start today.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, Late Edition.
Alex Armstrong Tonight, Late Edition, from 11 o'clock every night.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I've been in Westminster for a long time, but I know that though power may be here, its effect on people's lives is across the whole of the country. We may be where rules are made, but it's where they're implemented that matters. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for forthright and frank discussion on where Britain has come from, where it's going, and...
Good afternoon, Britain. At 1 minute before 2 o'clock, we're expecting Nigel Farage to make an announcement on his future in public life at any minute now.
It comes as rival parties call for a parliamentary probe after it emerged the Reform UK did not declare benefits provided by a convicted fraudster.
Well, as we await this statement, let's speak to our political editor, Christopher Hope, who joins us live from Westminster. Christopher, it's important to say that this will be a statement from Nigel Farage with no room for questions.
Yeah, that's right, Tom. It's a statement on his future in public life, and that's why it's got everyone talking. Of course, his enemies in politics, Labour, the Tories, they want him to walk away. Don't think that's going to happen. That will be giving a victory into all the people attacking him, the left-wing press, as he would describe them. He's very upset about some cameras. None of them were GBNews cameras, and we knew nothing about this, approaching his family in recent days in their homes when he was in America. That what appears to have triggered the outburst on social media yesterday. A report in today's Telegraph is saying how it may be until the autumn until the inquiry into the £5 million gift from Christopher Harwood is complete. He may want to lance that boil and declare a by-election now and invite all comers to bring him down and stop him re-entering Parliament. We're not sure what's going to happen yet. I've talked to people close to him. He's absolutely furious about what they say is the establishment, the left-wing media trying to bring him down every opportunity. That'll be a theme, I think, of what he says shortly at 2 p.m. We're expecting at any moment now, live on GB News. Here is a man who came back into politics almost reluctantly. Initially, he said he wouldn't fight the 2024 general election. He waited a week, 10 days. Such was the support for him he said he found in the country. He then thought, yes, I will fight this. He then, of course, was returned as an MP in Clacton. I think it was the 8th time of trying in previous by-elections, and now he's an MP. But he has not made any hiding of the fact he finds it frustrating that he can't get called when he wants to be called in Parliament. When he's a European Parliament MP, he knew when he's being called. He knew it would be a 5-minute slot at a certain point on a day. In Parliament, in the building behind me, he has to arrive at the start of a debate and then wait for hours until he gets his turn to speak. He's a busy man. He finds that frustrating. The system is freighted against small parties like Nigel Farage's Reform Party. It really supports the two-party system, and it frustrates him. He staged walkouts recently from PMQs. He's always being talked about, but he can't reply. He finds that irritating, I think, and maybe that's where what he'll be saying now. And of course, the rules are that you must declare any gift, any support, if it seems to be political, a year out from a general election or before you enter Parliament, if it's worth more than £300. He maintains the Christopher Harwood gift was just a gift, a personal gift to support his security and thank him for Brexit. Others say that's not the case, and in fact, Kemi Badenoch this morning was saying she doesn't know anybody else who received £5 million with no strings attached. And that's a question which is being looked at by parliamentary authorities. But if that report doesn't come back until the autumn, and it may lead to him being forced to have a by-election after a local poll of residents in Clacton, if it goes that far, he may be trying to lance that boil now and have that by-election now. But I should say, in the past hour, I've had it confirmed, that won't mean that this investigation stops. It will be, frankly, paused and restarted again into the £5 million if you were re-elected to Parliament. Although it's hard to understand that the second time it starts again, would that same body recommend another by-election? That would be a second by-election, of course, in Clacton, or the second election there in maybe 3 or 4 years.
Christopher, a by-election is a very high-risk strategy. We now have Restore on the political party scene as well, and they are going to throw everything and the kitchen sink at a by-election in that area.
It is high risk, of course, and Restore may try and stand against him and split that vote on the right, Rupert Lowe's party in Great Yarmouth. That could happen. We understand, though, he is popular locally. Yes, critics say he's not there a lot. He's travelling around the world and the UK a lot, but he is liked locally. He's someone who people have a real personal fondness for, and that personal, almost messianic support for him is what has carried him through. For me, looking at that party, it's like a start-up business in the sense it needs to find its next level at some point. It's only just restructured the weeks and months after the general election. It's now taken in millions and millions of pounds of donor money. Its support's gone up to well over 200,000 members. It's changed almost out of recognition since the party which was there when Nigel Farage entered Parliament just 2 years ago. And I wonder whether he's got to recognise the way I run this show must change too, the way it can't all be on me. I can't do all the vetting of the general election candidates, the thousands and thousands of local election candidates required for next May. I can't do all of these things. I must give some support to others. And for me, the criticism of Reform UK UK, is I can't see around him who else will he trust to do that, and that's part of the problem. So in a sense, maybe Nigel Farage has got to find it in himself to let go of some of that authority in Reform UK and give it to others and have their back and not challenge it and know where you stand. That could be a learning for him. But all we know is he's giving a statement imminently about his future in public life. He could say anything. He could, of course, Dawn and Tom, walk away from politics altogether. That can happen too. Were that to happen, I'd expect Reform's poll ranking to collapse like a souffle to around the early teens from the mid-20s. That is the importance this party has. It really is the Nigel Farage show. He is widely supported across the country in the polls, and he's seeing that increasingly in by-elections and elections. Or it's worth noting, of course, that in the most recent round of by-elections, he didn't win any in those 3 that were held last month.
It is worth noting, Christopher, that Nigel Farage has resigned as party leaders several times before. I mean, he resigned as leader of UKIP after the 2015 general election, and then was back as leader just a few weeks later. I mean, he's done this sort of boomerang job as being leader of now 3 political parties, where he's resigned and come back. I mean, could we see another boomerang?
Well, Tom, I was there in all of those moments. I was there on the cliffs of Dover in 2015 when he quit, said he was quitting then as the leader of UKIP. I was there also at the back end of the 2019 general election campaign when he formed the Brexit Party to fight those European Parliament elections. I was the only reporter, frankly, with him on the bus during that European Parliament elections in May 2019 that everyone forgets. But the Brexit Party won that, forcing out Theresa May within 2 months that summer, and of course Boris Johnson came in, and Nigel Farage then stood down Brexit Party candidates almost to bequeath that majority, that supermajority, to Boris Johnson. He's been here before. He does, you know, he has got the scars on his back. He had a plane crash in 2010 in that election campaign when he's flying a banner behind a light aircraft and crashed in a field. He's been in constant pain. In the 2015 election campaign, when I was with him, he was in constant pain for his back. He has got the scars on his back on his commitment to public life. He delivered the market for Brexit. That was, of course, supported by Boris Johnson, but he created those numbers of people who voted for the UKIP party, well more than 3 million in 2015, which led, well, that was the foundation figure, I think, for what became that winning win in the Brexit referendum in 2016. He has done his fair share in public life. He's always existed against the establishment, never had any honours, any peerages, no knighthoods, the things you might expect to go towards someone like that in public life. He's never got that. He's existed outside of the establishment, trying to take it on, and he had one final challenge in him, which is fighting the next general election for Reform UK. As things stand, I still think he'll do that, but he may be reshaping his role within the party. He may be trying to have this by-election in Clacton to take on all comers and beat them one more time. We'll wait and see.
Christopher, it's going to be, we are waiting. I mean, it was meant to be happening at 2 o'clock, this announcement. Obviously, it's now 8 minutes past 2. But Nigel Farage has spoken a lot about the press, and we know a lot of this has been triggered by Sky News doorstepping him at the airport. And he did lose his temper, and it's never a good idea for any politician to lose their temper. How much of that do you think is playing out into what we're about to hear today?
I think a lot. I think that Nigel Farage is someone who governs his family life extremely cautiously and carefully. Back in 2015, he was really moving away from being in touch with the public. He had a very bad experience with people when he was having a Sunday lunch with his family, and that really hurt him. He knows his family have taken a lot of the flack from his politics. I think that stays with him. When his various homes he owns in the UK were doorstepped by other media outlets, again, not by GBNews, and we knew nothing about it as far as I understand, he was in America and had reports back from his family, and that may have triggered his response on that clip that was aired by Sky News. Certainly not, that may, understandably, you know, there's a father and a grandfather there reacting when he's not in the country to protect his family. That may have driven what happened. What they're bearing is now, though, I just don't see how all the pressure from outside against him being leader of Reform UK, from the left-wing media, as he would call them, the establishment parties, as he would call them, even some establishment broadcasters knocking on doors when his family are at home, he wouldn't want to be the end of his time in politics, because that would be almost giving in to them. So that's why I can't see him walking away as Reform UK leader. I could be proved wrong, but I can't see it for that reason. But he's someone who loves his family. He's a dad to them, but, you know, when he became a grandfather recently, that was the most important thing that had happened to him. And if you're Nigel Farage and you're winning election after election after election, family comes first. That's what matters to him. I think the final straw probably was this approach to his family members when they were at home and he was out the country, and he's going to try and draw a line about that, and the attacks of the left-wing media on him and his family. Well, he'll say they've got to stop. Whether they stop, of course, is a different matter altogether.
I mean, it must be an incredibly difficult balance for a politician in this country. I mean, despite the talk of all this money surrounding Nigel Farage, politicians don't have the same sort of security, protection, wealth that politicians in the United States do, where they can have the same sort of separation, I suppose, from public life as over there.
Sound if you're talking to me.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Christopher. Let's see if we can re-establish that sound with Christopher Hope. Oh, he's back there.
It's back now.
Now, the thing about British politics is that our politicians are open and accessible with the public. Compared to other countries, they are not paid as much as politicians in other countries are, and we don't expect them to have 24/7 security. And yet, when you're someone with the international profile, frankly, the fame in this country and beyond as Nigel Farage, that becomes an incredibly difficult thing to balance.
Well, it is. I mean, but, you know, this party was a start-up party. It didn't really exist in the same way just over 2 years ago when it was run by Richard Tice. It was around 10 points in the poll, 12 points in the poll. That went through the roof at the last general election, and afterwards he was hauling in members. Of course, they famously, in Christmas 2024, he hired some projectors and beamed the party's members onto CCHQ to demonstrate the support for Reform UK, and it hasn't stopped there. The money's been flowing too. They regularly pull in more money on a quarterly basis with the Electoral Commission than the other parties. This party is going places in terms of members and support. What hasn't changed, Tom and Dawn, is the structures. It still is very much Nigel Farage's party. He's in charge, and that will be putting pressure on him. He's currently going through a vetting process for candidates to fight in the general election, which he thinks could be.
I'm just going to break into you now because we've got another bit of parallel, some breaking news into us now, which is that Prince Harry and co-claimants have lost their case against the publisher of the Daily Mail newspaper.
That was being held in the High Court today. They've just announced their verdict. Prince Harry has lost, and the other claimants included Baroness Lawrence, Stephen Lawrence's mum, Sir Elton John, who decided to sue associated newspapers.
Nigel Farage is now speaking. Let's jump in.
The biggest membership of any political party in the country. And of course, on May the 7th, just gone, we achieved some huge successes in the local elections. Not only did we achieve breakthroughs in Scotland and in Wales, but we absolutely dominated in the Midlands and the North, the old Labour heartlands. And that is why Keir Starmer is now on his way out. Not to forget that in East Anglia, the Conservatives have now, by us, been reduced to nothing more than a rump. It seems to me that the establishment have now decided that they can't beat us fairly, so they've chosen to use foul means. Let me be absolutely clear. After the furore and the media pile-on, well, not just the media, the other political parties too, let me be absolutely clear. I have done nothing wrong. I have not broken the law in any way at all. I have not misused public money. And you know, for the first 2 years of being an MP, my personal MP expenses are zero. Not, of course, that you'll read about that in mainstream media. And yes, of course, Parliament has its rules about how members ought to behave. And I believe I've absolutely obeyed those rules and done so under getting good legal advice. The standard rules are clear. This is what they say. The code applies to members in all aspects of their public life. It does not seek to regulate what members do in their purely personal lives. So it would seem from the last couple of years, from the way I've been treated, that the press would rather our members of Parliament had no assets and no wealth at all. They seem to fundamentally object to any MP that has outside income. Indeed, they view those that have continuing business interests with severe scepticism. Making money is not a crime. Now, going back to the 90s, I was in the commodity markets. I had a very, very good, high-earning career. I gave that up at a huge cost. Being a member of the European Parliament for 20 years cost me a huge amount of money. But I did it because I had a goal. I had a goal and a belief that we should leave the European Union, get back to being a self-regulating nation that makes its own laws, charts its own destiny, and among other things, of course, controls its own borders. We might not yet, 10 years on, have reaped as many of the benefits as we ought, but one day I believe we will. And let's be frank, if I hadn't done what I'd done, there would have been no referendum, there would have been no Brexit. I came out at the end of that with very little money indeed. But over the last 10 years, I've been writing, I've been lecturing, I've been broadcasting, I've been investing. I promoted one or two financial products, and for those that followed me into them, they've more than doubled their money, which I'm pleased about. I also worked extensively in those years of 2021 to 2024 as an influencer with over 7 million followers on social media. So yes, over the last 10 years, I have financially done well, but that of itself should not be looked upon as a crime. And yes, I had the equivalent of a lottery win, a large personal gift, and I'll come to that and the details of that in just a second. The really big question that I want to pose is, do we want leaders that know how to make money? Do we want leaders that have run businesses, employed people, and understand how the world works? Well, I'm going to argue today, we absolutely need successful people from all walks of life, but particularly from business and industry. We need them not just in Parliament, we need them in government if we're even going to have half a chance of turning around the dire economic state this country now finds itself in. Contrast that with a cabinet, 24 men and women, not one of whom has any serious experience of private business, who frankly haven't got a clue. So don't be surprised that in economic terms we are going down the drain. Now, Standards investigating me over the gift has now reared its head again as a result of a lot of copy in this week's Sunday Times, incidentally written by a journalist who publicly says that he despises me. And despite the fact that many of the things that were written in the article were wholly inaccurate or indeed irrelevant, yet another Standards investigation is underway. Standards are now being used as a political tool. On the gift, it was given to me on an unconditional basis. I can do with that money exactly as I wish. But there is a much bigger reason why I'm going to need that money, and it's simply this. For over 20 years now, I have been subject to constant demonisation by the press. For daring to be outside the consensual view on many issues, I've been attacked again and again. And I am the most physically and verbally attacked public figure or politician of modern times. Yes, you will know of some of the incidents, milkshakes thrown in my face, placards bashed over my head, but let me promise you, you only know about a fraction of the number of times that I've been assaulted. One little example you've probably never heard of. It was a Sunday afternoon a few years ago in the local village pub. In come the mob, about 50 of them. We decided the safest thing to do was as quickly as possible to get into the car and to drive away. But the mob surrounded the car, banging on the bonnet and the windscreen, kicking the side of the doors. It was a genuinely dangerous and terrifying situation to be in. The car was written off. I didn't even bother with an insurance claim and did everything I could not to make it public. But these are the kind of things that I've had to put up with over many, many years. And over the last year it's got worse, with an attack on my home very similar to the one that the Prime Minister suffered, and literally daily online calls for me to be murdered. For some reason, that doesn't seem to worry the police. Repeatedly over the years, I asked the Home Secretary for help. I was rejected again and again. And in that period, when I wasn't in elected politics, between 2021 and 2024, I ran up personally very, very substantial bills to make sure that I was safe. When I became an MP, Parliament said, yes, we will help you with security. But almost unbelievably, just a couple of days after the murder of Charlie Kirk, 70% of that security funding was withdrawn. I am going to need security for the rest of my life, and I cannot even tell you how grateful I am to Christopher Harbourne, because now I will never ever need to worry about whether I've got the resource. Well, the new attack from the media is that somehow I am a crook, I am dishonest. Yet another reason to hate me. Commentators over the weekend have said, oh, look at the interviews Nigel's doing. He's not himself. He's getting angry. Well, here's why. For some reason last week, the editor of the Times newspaper decided to publish a picture of where my daughter lives. There is no public interest in my daughter whatsoever. She is not involved in current affairs, doesn't seek to be involved in current affairs, and has never been used by me once at any point in my political career. No photographs on election addresses or anything like that. I've always done my absolute best to protect the privacy and safety of my family. By publishing that photograph, the editor of the Times has directly threatened her security. I wonder what happened to the Leveson inquiry of years ago, an inquiry that sought to bring better balance between what the press could do and families of those in public life. Worse still, she now has broadcasters haranguing her. Sky News were one of them, and when I questioned them on it, they willfully and deliberately lied and said on their channel that they hadn't contacted the family. Well, let me be clear. I will not tolerate intimidation of my family. I will not tolerate the location of where they live being revealed. I will not tolerate any of my family being endangered because of what I choose to do in public life. So yes, you can ask, am I angry? But I've never been angrier in my life. I'm also pretty upset with the behaviour of this Labour government. They began in 2025 and then tried again into 2026 to cancel elections for taxpayers, and to do so on a vast and epic scale, albeit with the connivance of the Conservative Party. Why? Well, of course, fear of reform. I'm proud of the fact that we fought a legal action that got nearly 5 million council tax voters the right to go out on May the 7th and give their view. Now, of course, they want to reduce the voting age down to 16. Again, they think that will help damage reform. And just a couple of weeks ago, following the Makerfield by-election, they changed the voting rules for the Manchester mayoral by-election. They've gone away from first past the post, again for fear that reform might win. And now they've come after our money. Now, to be clear, in the early days after the last general election, it was the huge increase in our membership at £25 a time that actually got us into a position where we could build a proper party. Over the last year, some big donors have been attracted to us. Extraordinary. These are men who've gone off as entrepreneurs around the world and succeeded. The sort of people we used to admire over centuries. Now government ministers refer to them in Parliament as malign actors. And so they keep changing all the rules again and again just to stop reform. Frankly, it is like living in a communist country. I could never have believed such a thing would happen here. Ignore the fact, of course, that over decades peerages have been given to donors, and that Labour's donors, in the run-up to the 2024 general election, now seem to have been awarded the most extraordinary government contracts. Perhaps Dominic Cummings was right last year when he said Whitehall will break the law to stop reform winning power. And we've been subject in the last few months to the use of illegally obtained information, firm evidence of computer hacking, and now leaks from government agencies. And this is all, of course, a great distraction, because we're about to get a Prime Minister who's coming in with no mandate whatsoever. He didn't even stand on the 2024 manifesto. This country needs a general election, even if Labour, the Conservatives and the media don't want it. And whilst this pile-on against reform happens, the boats continue to cross the English Channel. Our fractured defences make us look weaker and weaker against what I think is now an increasingly dangerous Vladimir Putin. Business confidence is the lowest it's now been for 16 years, and I speak to you from a capital city where men can't wear watches and women can't wear jewellery on the street. Britain is broken and the public know it, and we need change. Now, the issue with my daughter was the final straw. Enough is enough. And I thought over the weekend, what shall I do? I could go out and try and make some real big money. I could go to the USA, where I've got plenty of offers. And then I thought, why should I be judged, today or in history in the future, by Sky News and their ilk? Why should they be the people that decide my fate when, as I repeat, I've done nothing wrong? I've thought about it hard, and I've decided today I will resign as a Member of Parliament for Clacton-on-Sea, thereby forcing a by-election, which would happen, I hope, in short order. No, I've decided that the people of Clacton should be the judges of my actions. This will be a people versus the establishment by-election. It's a chance to stick two fingers up to the entire establishment, to frankly tell them where to go. And that is why I will be putting my name forward to stand in this by-election. I will fight to win. I will fight to continue the political revolution that reform has started. And I would say this to you, the voters of Clacton: if I win, you win. Because if I lose, they win. And we will never, with the two old parties, get the type of fundamental change that we need to fix broken Britain. Thank you.
Well, there we have it. A by-election for Clacton. A furious Nigel Farage with an eviscerating statement against the establishment, as he describes it, certain media organisations who, as in his words, have gone after his family. They, of course, deny doing so.
Yeah, that was Nigel Farage announcing there that he is going to resign as an MP and stand in a by-election in Clacton to stand as the people versus the establishment. Those were the words he chose. Britain is broken, our political system is broken. He wants to stand as a man of the people, as he's often said in the past, and challenge all those political systems. He also revealed there, Tom, some very personal information about the attacks that he's had on his life. He is threatened with murder on a daily basis, which is why he says he needs that £5 million gift. It was an unconditional basis. He has done nothing wrong, not committed a crime, and he says that he will stand and fight in that by-election in Clacton. So there you have it. Nigel Farage is resigning as an MP and will re-stand as in the by-election in Clacton, taking on the establishment.
Well, let's speak to Christopher Hope now, our political editor, joining us live from Westminster. Christopher, a by-election for our diaries.
Absolutely, and look at the language there from Nigel Farage. As we thought, and we're reporting on GBNews in the past hour, Tommy, he's not leaving politics. There's too much riding now. He's got one last, frankly, throw of the dice in the next general election, but he is resigning as the MP for Clacton. He says there'll be a battle between ordinary people and the establishment. It's your chance to give two fingers up at the establishment. He says it's the people against the state. He wants to re-energise his party. This will have no bearing on the investigation over the monies received from Christopher Harwood, as we've been reporting in the past half an hour or so, because the rules mean that any inquiry will simply pause and then go ahead. Now, what will the other parties do? I think back to 2008 when David Davis quit as the Tory MP for Holden Price and Howden because he was upset about the way that the deep state was, the CCTV and the Big Brother state was moving forwards, and no other parties put up a candidate against the Tories then. What will Labour and the Lib Dems and the Tories do this time? Will they not put anyone up against Nigel Farage and let him win by a huge majority unchallenged? Because what Nigel Farage wants now is a fight, a battle with the other main parties. If they don't play him at that game, what happens next? I look back again at that example from 2008 when David Davis quit as a Tory MP and no one stood against him, and it became a bit of a farce really, and everyone thought it was an ego trip by David Davis back then. He would deny that, of course. Some may say this also is an ego trip by Nigel Farage. He simply wants to have a battle in a seat he won not even or barely 2 years ago. But he is absolutely furious. Look at the language there he used about other media outlets. He talked about the Times newspaper putting photographs of his properties in the paper. One of his daughters lives in one of those properties. She's not in any sense in public life, and now she is facing, he says, will be facing threats from people who don't like Nigel Farage. He says he repeatedly is said by people they want to murder him, they want to do him harm, and the police don't take it seriously. He says he's been subject to 2 leaks in recent months from the British state and elsewhere. I think he thinks also some of the information that's getting into the press has been leaked and people aren't challenging that. He mentioned the Leveson inquiry again, because his point is that people's children in public life shouldn't be allowed to be approached or anywhere near journalists. That's part of what led to, he says, the Leveson inquiry into press ethics back in 2011. He makes some claims about Sky News. He claims that they were part of this camera crew who approached his family. He will not tolerate, he says, the attempts to intimidate his family and leaving them endangered. He says that what's wrong with making money? He says, why are entrepreneurs who have made money, maybe like Christopher Harwood and others, why are they being punished and vilified by the political class for giving Reform UK money? Because Reform UK is trying to stir up and upend the political system. He talked his time before he became an MP. He was an influencer. He was a broadcaster, of course. He broadcast extensively on GB News, but less so in recent months, making clear he made money outside of politics. He won the lottery. He accepts that. But he talked about the impact on his family, and he went back to that when the pub he was in was stormed by some activists, and then his car was written off and they jumped on the bonnet. I was aware of that, and it did happen, I think, if I remember rightly, before the 2015 general election. Again, we don't publish this information because we wouldn't want to put any further threat to any of our elected politicians, but he has now volunteered that information. That really did hurt him at the time. That actually affected how he campaigned in the 2015 election, and I think put him back in his shell, made him take less risks by meeting members of the public. He's clearly saying enough is enough. I'm going to draw a line here. He's saying to other parties, frankly, come on then, if you don't want me in Parliament, put up a candidate who can beat me. The question now is, will other candidates, other parties respond to this, or will they let him carry on? So it could go two ways, this, Dawn and Tom. Back in 2008, when David Davis resigned as appointed principal, that time about Big Brother State, no other parties stood against him. That could happen, and then they will say it's an ego trip by Nigel Farage wasting taxpayers' money on a by-election. But what Farage wants is other candidates to stand against him, and he to then challenge them and take them on and say, you're the establishment, I'm the challenger.
And of course, this has happened before in the past. Zach Goldsmith in 2016, David Davis in 2008. Of course, in 2008, no party stood against David Davis, no major party, and it looked like a bit of a stunt. It's unlikely that that will happen this time. But Nigel Farage knows he has built his career off the back of by-elections. Clacton in 2014, Rochester and Stroud rising UKIP into being a serious player in parliamentary politics. And then Runcorn, just last year, he was riding high. But Chopper, in the last 4 parliamentary by-elections for Westminster, Reform has failed to break through. And this has coincided with a narrative that the momentum of the Reform Party has somewhat stalled. The disappointment in Makerfield, in Gorton Denton, the fact that in Buchan or in Aberdeen South they just weren't a player. This will need to be a big win for Nigel Farage, frankly, to re-establish himself as the man with momentum.
Yeah, no question. On the most recent series of by-elections that were held, he didn't do that well, of course. The SNP won one seat in Broughty Ferry, and then the Tories won Aberdeen South, mainly fuelled by, often in Scotland, voters vote against the Independence Party with Unionist parties and vice versa, and then didn't beat off the threat from Andy Burnham in Makerfield. So didn't win any of those 3 by-elections, and that was a setback for him. There's a big risk here, Tom, as you say, because this idea of the anyone but Farage candidate, as we do see the Greens pulling back from fighting in Makerfield, and I would say tacitly lending a degree of support for the Labour candidate Andy Burnham in that situation. The idea of other parties putting up a single candidate and then not standing, that could become a real moment here with an establishment candidate against Nigel Farage. The anyone but Farage issue, though, is a big deal.
Christopher, will this have any bearing at all on the Parliamentary Standards Commission over the £5 million of donations that Nigel Farage was talking about there? Will this affect that in any way, shape or form?
Well, that's right. We're not really clear how they want to play this, the other parties. They will be enjoying the discomfort of Nigel Farage. I've had various messages from Labour figures making quite clear they're enjoying the discomfort Farage is feeling. His anger is absolutely pure. As soon as other broadcasters, again not GB News, who had no idea if this was happening, when they knocked on the doors of these various properties and when Nigel Farage and we are understood, maybe a talk to Nigel Farage's daughter, and there was some upset, and he was in America and he reacted like a grandfather and the father that he is. That is saying, he's saying, well, I will not put up with this anymore. It doesn't mean any of this behaviour might stop, by the way, but certainly Nigel Farage is saying, I am going nowhere, and I defy you to kick me out of politics. If you think you can beat me, even with a single candidate, anyone but Farage candidate, I will beat them too. And it's a moment in our politics, in many moments in Nigel Farage's career. He is determined, it seems to me now. He will fight the next election. He will fight it as Reform UK's leader, and he wants to be Prime Minister. But he's saying to the main parties, the establishment parties, if you don't agree, take me out now.
Anna Turley has just tweeted, the Labour MP, saying she's accused Nigel Farage of playing the victim in his Clacton by-election announcement, and also said in a separate social media post, leave means leave, Nigel.
Well, that's obviously a joke about leave means leave. Was one of the campaigns that ran in the 2016 election. She's not saying there, is she, that Labour will stand a candidate. They are probably wondering what to do next. I think that's misjudged by Anna Turley, the Labour Party chair, to say that he's playing the victim card when he's talking about death threats. Threats to his family not being safe, a car being written off, 50 protesters against him storming a pub where he's having a family lunch. I think to say that's playing the victim card is misjudged. I think Anna Turley may regret saying that.
Well, Christopher Hope, this is a big moment. Of course, we don't yet know the date of any by-election that could take place in Clacton. Presumably, Nigel Farage will resign as an MP in the next week or so. Parliament has 2 more weeks to run before it ends, but there could be a by-election before the end of the summer.
Well, that's right, there could be. I need to look at my diary, Tom. You may be quicker than me at this. I don't know how soon they can order a by-election because Parliament rises for its summer break towards the end of next week. Then we have a new Prime Minister. I was told by one senior Reform figure that Nigel Farage is doing, frankly, what Andy Burnham should do. Don't forget, we're about to have Andy Burnham crowned, and it is a coronation of an MP as Prime Minister a week on Monday. It looks very unlikely Al Khan's, the former Armed Forces Minister, will stand against him. It is quite clear that Labour want to have an individual made Prime Minister despite not fighting on the 2024 election manifesto. And that was called out by Nigel Farage in his statement there moments ago on GBNews. And of course, Farage is completely correct. Andy Burnham has never fought, had no part it played, and never fought on that general election manifesto from 2024. We are told from briefings, from the odd interview he might do with another broadcaster, as he did last week, that he'll stick by those pledges, but nothing further to that. That does offend, I think, against people who believe in democracy. Clearly, Reform UK are saying we're going to have a by-election, even when we don't need to do this. We are having a by-election to show that people want Nigel Farage in Parliament. The question is, how will other parties respond to that?
It's almost using the logic of Andy Burnham against himself. Burnham has said repeatedly that, in fact, he responded to the Leader of the Opposition, Kenny Badenoch, during his Reddit Q&A last week. Badenoch said, why aren't you answering questions? Why are you becoming Prime Minister with no scrutiny? And he said, I spent weeks answering the questions of the people of Makerfield who endorsed me, and that's why I'm here today. Suddenly, perhaps accidentally, Andy Burnham has started a precedent that you just have to hold a by-election and that answers all of the questions that people might have. That's certainly the logic that Nigel Farage seems to be using.
Well, exactly. I mean, the idea of crowning Andy Burnham as a Prime Minister is something which this country doesn't do. The reason why we have elections is so the leaders of our parties go around the country, talking to the local papers, talking to GBNews, doing hustings with other candidates, maybe even leaders hustings. So after 6 weeks of an election period, we're familiar with them, we know who they are, we know really broadly where they're coming from. None of that has happened in Andy Burnham's case. He was elected by maybe 30,000 people in Makerfield, and now he's going to become Prime Minister. And this has been, as Nigel Farage would say, it's been accepted by the establishment parties with barely a flicker of why is this happening. The Tories, of course, are calling for a general election if they can't fund defence. The only party I can see which is calling for an election now is Reform UK. I beg to be corrected on the Lib Dems, but Reform UK are saying, give us an election now. Reform UK does always root its support in and amongst people and voters, and that is where they sit, and that's why they're going back almost to the people of Claxton in this case and saying to all the rivals there, if you don't want me to be your MP, kick me out. It's a direct challenge to them. We are yet to see how they're going to respond.
OK, Christopher Hope, thank you so much for now. And if you are just joining us at 20 minutes to 3 o'clock, the breaking news is that Nigel Farage resigns as an MP to stand in Clacton by-election, saying it's going to be a people versus the establishment by-election. And it was also revealed very personal and harrowing details about the daily threats on his life and the physical attacks he has had on his home and his car, in one case writing a car off. And that is why he is very angry at a news outlet, Sky News in this case, doorstepping his daughter at her home.
Well, let's speak now to the former Conservative Minister Kevin Foster, because, Kevin, you, of course, were a member of the House of Commons the last time a Member of Parliament resigned in order to fight that seat again. That was Zach Goldsmith in 2016 in Richmond Park. However, it didn't go quite to plan for him as he lost that seat.
Yeah, it's a big gamble. You know, Zach Goldsmith resigned to fight. It was on Heathrow Airport, if I recall correctly, and the government announcing support for it, and actually ended up losing to the Liberal Democrats in a big swing against him. And when you look at the numbers in Clacton, people watching the show might think Nigel has a very, very big majority there. He doesn't. His majority is about 8,400, and he got about, I think, look at the numbers, 46% there. So, you know, this isn't a complete, shoe-in. You know, it's not like he got 2/3 of the vote on a massive turnout. So there is certainly a risk that it's a dramatic move. It's certainly, obviously, one he's thought through very carefully. But it is still a gamble, even though it does have some obvious potential rewards for him of, one, getting a re-endorsement, two, if the standards process did suspend him for 10 days, it would then make a recall petition look to try and get a by-election look actually patently stupid. That, well, hang on, we've already just had a by-election and people reconfirmed the MP. But, you know, people listening to this do say, you know, this is a gamble he's taking. But, you know, he's someone who, for many years, has, you know, faced up against the odds and has won through.
Kevin, obviously, when Nigel Farage won that seat, Restore weren't the force they are to be reckoned with now. How much do you think damage they could do to him winning the by-election?
I suspect the damage Restore can do is the damage they did in Makerfield, which they won't take a massive amount of vote. They didn't in Makerfield. The problem is they changed the conversation and the narrative. You know, you get a lot of negative narrative about Nigel and Reform, particularly some leading members of Reform from Restore. And of course, Reform then responding to that in Makerfield meant they weren't spending time talking about Andy Burnham, who was their actual threat in Makerfield, as shown by the vote. So, you know, Restore, I suspect, wouldn't get too much traction, particularly against Nigel personally. But the problem is, in a by-election, as we know at the moment, we can talk about Nigel very openly. The moment this by-election formally gets underway, all the Ofcom rules come in about balance, and me even mentioning the name Clacton means we have to read out a whole list of candidates, including probably, you know, Cam Finface. You know, that is the issue of someone like Restore coming into this, is it does change the narrative and strengthens arguments for whoever emerges as the strongest challenger.
Now, Kevin, you mentioned what Restore might do. In the last minute or so, Rupert Lowe has issued a statement. He has said, Farage has proven one thing today and one thing only. Everything that he does is about one person, Nigel Farage. The people of Clacton do not need a media circus descending on their town over a busy tourist season because their MP has made a series of bad decisions. He goes on to say, a by-election will not deflect from questions and bad decisions, nor should it. I will be making an announcement later today about Restore Britain's plans for the Clacton by-election. So Rupert Lowe there hinting that he may well stand a candidate.
Yeah, I think from those comments, it sounds almost certain that Rupert Lowe will be standing a candidate in this. Although I suspect, you know, I don't think in the holiday season, you know, living in a holiday resort myself, will be too detracted from by there being some extra visitors to Clacton at this time of year. But this is where I think the issue is, you know, that's the first response out the door pretty much, apart from those tweets we've heard from Anna Turley. And it is that potential for someone who is on the right, who can make some quite strident questions of Nigel and others, and of course based on some of his own experiences. And it's that potential to change the narrative. I suspect the actual vote, like we saw in Makerfield, they'll take a few, but it won't be the decisive factor in the by-election overall.
Kevin, how much do you think this will distract from that Standards Commission over the allegations he didn't correctly report that £5 million of donations that he was talking about there? He's done nothing wrong. I didn't break any laws. I need this for security. I get threats on my life on a daily basis. Will this make that go away?
It won't make it go away. I think we need to be clear on that front. You know, Standards Commissioner will presumably continue to do the work, particularly if he managed to get re-elected. Of course, if he's defeated in the by-election, that rather speaks for itself. But it won't make this all go away. And of course, people will continue to ask questions. I think, though, what people perhaps are looking at this, perhaps sometimes wrongly thinking, will this affect Reform voters and such? I think actually a lot of Reform voters are quite hardened against stuff being thrown at Nigel Farage. You know, we can see what's happened over the last 10, 15 years. But perhaps the real problem for Reform is that the negatives have been going up. You know, people prepared to tactically vote to stop Reform winning. And if you're on 40% of the vote, that's a problem. If you're on 25% of the vote, that's an absolute disaster and a wipeout, because it means people can identify the candidate and vote for someone else, and your vote isn't high enough to deal with that in most constituencies. So it doesn't make all the questions go away, it doesn't make all the comments go away, but of course I suspect the thing it would stop would be there being a successful recall petition, even if the standards process resulted in one in a suspension long enough for one to be set up, because it would just seem a farce to have another by-election.
That's the crucial point to explain as well. The Standards Committee can't expel a member of Parliament. They can only find against one that would then lead to a recall petition being able to be launched by constituents, which, if it then passes 10% of the total electorate, could then launch a by-election. It's unlikely that if people in that constituency have all just voted in a by-election, that they'll want to vote for another by-election to take place. Kevin Foster, thanks indeed for joining us and talking through this extraordinary day in British politics.
Yes, lots of political reaction coming in from across the board. Many political commentators saying that Nigel Farage is playing the victim card. So let's cross live to GB News chief political correspondent Catherine Forster, who is actually in Ankara in Turkey for us for that NATO meeting there. Catherine, what do you make of what's happened so far here?
Yes, well, quite extraordinary. When I got on the Prime Minister's plane, along with lots of other journalists, we thought that the big story was here in Turkey, in Ankara, the NATO summit. What will Donald Trump say about the defence investment plan and the fact that we haven't even got a path to getting to 3% by 2030? But no, it dropped like a bombshell on some of our phones. We were all agog to see what he would say. We suspected that he was going to do in fact, exactly what he has done, which is to say, OK, well, let's let the people decide. And a lot of the media are being very horrible to me, and I haven't done anything wrong. So we will see. But anybody that thought that, you know, we've got 10 days of a Prime Minister and then Andy Burnham is going to sweep in, elected by 25,000 people. Anybody who thought that that was quite a lot to deal with for the summer, my goodness, well, get ready for a wild summer and yet another critical by-election. We had a by-election that has brought Andy Burnham into Westminster and is taking him to Downing Street. And now we've got a by-election where if Nigel Farage wins, as if I had to guess at the moment, I suspect he will do, he'll be able to say, look, they all tried to get me, I am the voice of the people, sticking two fingers up at the establishment. That is what he said, isn't it? But it's very, very high stakes, of course, because all of the other parties will be desperate to stop him, because if he succeeded, if he didn't get back in, that would make life very difficult for Reform indeed.
And yet, if he does get back in, and it does seem that everyone sort of expects it will, we should note that Clacton used to be the seat of Douglas Carswell, the first MP to defect to UKIP and force a by-election with that defection. It was seen to be the most demographically favourable seat in the country towards UKIP and now towards Reform. If Nigel Farage can't win in Clacton, he can't win anywhere.
Yes, exactly. If Nigel Farage can't win in Clacton, I do think he can't win anywhere. Reform have not had a good track record in by-elections lately, have they? In fact, in every one apart from Runcorn and Helsby that they won by, what, just 5 or 6 votes, they have lost. But Clacton is completely different, part because, as you say, of the demographics, and part because this is Nigel Farage. This is Nigel Farage, this huge figure. Brexit wouldn't have happened without him. He is, to many, Reform. So, yeah, I think he is likely to win, but certainly high stakes. And yes, the Prime Minister is here, but everyone is talking about a man back in London who's only got a few MPs.
OK, well, Catherine Forster, live from Ankara. Thank you very much indeed. Let's hop back to London now and go to Westminster to speak to Christopher Hope, our political editor. Christopher, the sands of Westminster are surely shaking today.
Well, they are. This is dramatic. It's Nigel Farage saying to the main parties, come on then, kick me out. A challenge to them, really, in any one but Farage candidate. Will they all unite behind one candidate to beat him? We'll wait and see. I should say, since I was last on air, I've had some clarification about these film camera crews going to the various properties owned by Nigel Farage. I should say those crews were operated by the broadcasting pool of which GB News is a part. So those cameras which knocked on the doors of the properties which so annoyed Nigel Farage was by the broadcasting pool, all broadcasters, and of course GB News is a part of that as a regulated Ofcom broadcaster. But yes, absolute drama here in Westminster. It's boiling hot and the temperature is rising and rising. I'll be talking to Robert Jenrick shortly, live on GB News, the first interview by any senior Reform politician about this electrifying news that Nigel Farage has resigned as the MP for Clacton. He will stand again as a candidate for Reform UK in Clacton. He's essentially laying down the gauntlet to all other parties, saying, if you don't want me in politics, if you're so cross with me, you're chucking all of this mud at me, some of which, frankly, is sticking, then beat me, kick me out. And what will happen next, I'm not sure. Back in 2008, I'm old enough to remember when David Davis resigned over Big Brother state concerns about the government, and fought and won that seat in Holter-Price and Howden, but no other party challenged him. The Tories didn't challenge him, no one challenged him, and it seemed like an ego trip for David Davis back then. This could be the same again. It may be that no other party stands against Nigel Farage. They allow him just to be re-elected with a huge majority in Clacton, but it'll be very tempting, I think, for parties to say, right, here's a chance to put a blow against Nigel Farage. We pool all of our efforts, our resources as best they can. They stand paper candidates, but a single candidate is the one we're going to try and pursue. Let's see if we can try and take apart Nigel Farage at the lead, stop him in his tracks, in his attempt, and what he sees at his march towards Downing Street. He's not resigning. In terms of leader, he is still remaining as leader. He is resigning, though, as the MP for Clacton. He wants to have a fight with his critics. He's had enough, though, of the coverage, the attacks, particularly of his family. What appears to have been the moment which triggered Nigel Farage was reports in the Times last week. Photographs of properties he owns, which of course is perfectly fine to own properties. They are identified in the Times newspaper. That has made a security risk for members of his family. He was out of the country at the weekend, of course. He's a father and a grandfather. Those things matter the most of all to Nigel Farage. When he saw that in the papers, he reacted. And then when the broadcasting pool sent cameras to knock on the doors, he got really cross and very, very angry about that. And that's why he lashed out in those clips aired elsewhere yesterday and over the weekend. So he's very cross, Farage. He'd never been crosser. And to prove that, he's fighting a by-election he didn't need to fight.
And it is being dubbed as the people versus the establishment, and always follow the money in these things, Christopher. The bookies have already, Reform UK is a bookmaker's overwhelming favourite to win the Clacton by-election, 1-7, Conservatives 5-1, Restore Britain 14-1, with Labour a very long shot at 16-1, and absolutely no chance for the Greens or the Lib Dems. Hardly a surprise there, but the bookies know what they're doing in these things.
What they do, Dawn. I mean, I think that's what any bookie would say. Without any other candidate to stand against him, Nigel Farage is a shoo-in. We'll wait and see. I'm trying to look at my phone to understand what Restore will do, although I don't think they'll do enough to beat Nigel Farage in this seat, but we'll wait and see. He said in his statement there he's the most physically and verbally attacked public figure of modern times. This will be the people versus the establishment in a by-election. It's going to be a very, very hot and dramatic summer.
Certainly is. Christopher Hope, thanks indeed for joining us. I know you'll have much more over the course of the next 3 hours too, and that first exclusive interview with a senior Reform figure. What an astonishing day of news today.
It really has been. The breaking news: Nigel Farage has resigned as MP for Clacton, triggering a by-election. The people are taking on the establishment.
Well, Martin Daubney's up with it next.
What would you do with £60,000 cash? What would you do with a real gold bar? Well, both have to be won in our Golden Summer celebration. First, there's £60,000 in tax-free cash to bolster your bank account this year. Plus, we'll also give you a fine gold bar worth over £5,000. For a chance to win, text GOLD to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entry starts at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB22 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 21st of August. This is a network giveaway. Entries will be pooled. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions, but every Friday night at 9 p.m. you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Some people enjoy lazy Sunday mornings, but not me.
What's the truth of the matter? So that's a very live question. Would you support him if he waters down these plans?
Before the spin sets in, I'll be getting to the truth.
This is personal.
No soft questions, no easy answers.
It's one thing if the state has rules in this country. It's another thing whether the police and others actually police them.
Setting the agenda and holding those in power to account.
You can't really blame her if the system is set up this way.
You will not want to miss it, trust me. The Camilla Tominey Show, Sundays from 9:30, only on GB News.
Welcome to Free Speech Nation with me, Josh Howard. This is